Now let us see them.
Okay, you sure? I'm going to call this meeting to order. I don't have a gavel, so count.
Stop.
All right.
But it looks like it's empty.
Open our working session for today. So, Laura Lee, please call the roll.
Special map.
Stu Boyd.
Here.
Denise Chapman.
Here.
Amy Doran.
Here.
Don Kirk.
Again.
Here.
Barbara Cruz.
Here.
Alexander Lessem.
Here.
Nancy Rumpel.
Here. Thank you, Laura Lee. And Stu. No, Nancy. Pledge, but I don't know.
But I your boy. Time is.
Oh, there it is. Okay, Nancy. Please wear us in the pledge. People left the students. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Nancy. The first item of business that we have is the adoption of the agenda. So for today, April 3rd, 2024. Are there any changes to today's agenda? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Thank you, Stu.
Second.
Thank you, Alexandra. And Laura Lee, would you please call the roll?
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Denise Chapman.
Aye.
Amy Doran.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Alexander Lessem.
Aye.
Nancy Rumpel.
Aye. Thank you, Laura Lee, and the agenda passes. School presentation. That would be our friends from early childhood. Yay.
Brought it up.
So, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, here is our, I'll let them introduce themselves, but it's our family engagement case. And so because of the work that we do with our families, I thought it'd be an opportunity to share with you some of the work that they do. And so I'll turn it over to Julie Lindsay. She's our parent and family community engagement coordinator. She'll introduce everybody and share the information about what we do with our program.
Great. Thank you, Lam. Do they want to sit down or?
Yes, the chairs. You guys.
Okay, all right. We may.
Here, don't.
Let's don't.
Good.
So good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I am excited to highlight family services in the early childhood program. As you all know, family engagement is crucial to a student's success in school. We follow the Head Start Parent, Family, and Community Engagement Framework to support families in achieving child and family outcomes. We have an exemplary program focused on building positive, trusting relationships with families. Last fall, our program was recognized during our Head Start review for promising practices in the area of family support, specifically economic mobility, helping families out of poverty. I'd like to introduce my team, which consists of 5 very talented child and family support professionals, 4 of whom are with us tonight. We have Jim Tapia, Liz Gandy, Holly Nyquist, and Jen Dotson. Beth Balke couldn't be here tonight. We also invited a Head Start parent, Shirley Fickle. So what do we do? The primary role of the CFSP, Child and Family Support Para, is to conduct regular home visits with our Head Start families. Studies have shown that Head Start visits are the most effective way for us to engage with families. They spend part of their week in the classroom. They are assigned to multiple sites and multiple teachers. CFSPs are the bridge between home and school, promoting communication between families and teachers. They share learning activities that families can do at home with their children, and CFSPs are very knowledgeable about community resources. CFSPs meet families where they are most comfortable, in the home, at the center where they work, or at a community site such as the library. Early in the school year, we complete a needs assessment with families to make sure they are connected to basic needs right away, and then other resources as needed, such as continuing their education, childcare, counseling, all the different resources in our community. Our parent curriculum is a family-friendly version of the social-emotional strategies that we use in the classroom. One of the cornerstones of Head Start is setting meaningful and attainable goals with families, giving them the skills to set goals in the future when they're no longer in our program. Shirley Fickle is a Head Start parent, and she will share her experience with home visits.
Hello, my name is Shirley Fickle. I am in the present a paraprofessional. I started like a lunch aide, but before that, there's Jenna. Jenna works with Teresa to help my kid, Jacoby, to have a very nice educational journey, learning journey. They don't just work with them at school. They work with them at home. They come visit us, and they make sure that the environment where our kid lives, where our kids live, is very healthy. They also, before I started working here, my husband and I were overcoming pandemic. It was hard for him to find a job. It was hard for me to find a job because I'm from Peru. And I was applying to all of the restaurants. There was no place for me there yet, but I have a foreign career foreign degree, International Business Administration, and I am transferring all my credits here. And with Jenna's help, I found the school that helps me with having my license and being a certified paraprofessional. And they also showed me and told me about the job fairs where I found a lunch aide position here. And that's how I started. Thanks goodness, because I was doing deliveries and it was a little, it got a little weird, delivery people and everything, weird people around. This was a very good opportunity. They make sure that my kid had study materials at home also. Now he's thriving. He loves to be here. It was a little hard for him at the beginning, new things. He's a pandemic child, so there was not too much socialization with other kids. It was just parents and his sister at home. So coming here was a very big change for him. And thanks to Mr. Isa and Jenna, he is thriving now. And also because Mr. Isa, because I saw her, she's so good at what she does. She's so passionate, so kind, so respectful with the kids, and treats every kid like how they need to be treated. She knows what they need. She knows what Jacoby needed in that moment. She worked with Jenna, and she helped me with them. And also, personally, like a mom, not just for the kids. They help all the family also. And also, they helped me, 2 weeks ago, we went to the Museum of Discovery, and it was so fun. After pandemic, I forgot how to socialize, so it was kind of hard for me to find what to talk with other parents about. What can I do after school? After school days, maybe the weekends, and they helped me find those resources.
Thank you,
And I'm so
Shirley.
thankful. Thank you so much. Thank you. She wouldn't shake the thanks.
Our CFSP, Jenna Tapia, is here to give an example of how we share the research-based CAT with doing positive solutions for families. Thank you.
So Positive Solutions for Families is an evidence-based curriculum which focuses on the social and emotional development of children ages 2 to 5. Each session provides families with practical strategies to prevent and manage challenging behaviors and affirms the importance of cultivating positive and meaningful connections. It works in conjunction with the curriculum that is taught within our classrooms and is therefore effective as the child is hearing a cohesive message while practicing skills both at home and at school. The parent or guardian is learning along with the child and also gaining confidence. In our role as child and family support, we meet with the families and go through each of the 7 sessions. During our visits with families, we get an inside look at how they feel about their child's development, their strengths as a family, and identify areas of growth. Building the bridge between school and home is vital. Our role is unique in that we see what is happening in the classroom and at home. This perspective allows us to gather pertinent information to best support our families. I'd like to share about one particular family in our program that I worked with. The family was experiencing a hardship, and the preschooler was finding it difficult to cope with their situation, and her behaviors began to escalate both at home and school. For 2 years, we worked closely with this family, building a foundation of trust and meeting with them as often as necessary to provide support and encouragement. We utilized the strategies provided within the curriculum and worked with the school staff to implement supports. The child was surrounded by patience, compassion, and consistency. She slowly let down her guard and began engaging with the trusted people in her life. With practice and positive reinforcement, she learned social emotional skills, is thriving, and now ready for kindergarten.
Thank you.
As you can imagine, some families are initially reluctant to participate in home visits. Liz Gandy is here to talk about how she was able to connect a family to resources who at first was reluctant to meet with her.
Thank you. We are very fortunate, as you all probably know, to live in an area so rich in community resources. Northern Colorado is full of agencies to assist our families who are struggling in areas such as affordable housing, food insecurity, regular medical and dental care, mental health, huge one, affordable and quality child care, debt and financial counseling, addiction, adult education, employment, etc. Head Start is all about fostering a sense of community. A significant part of our job is to build relationships with these organizations in our community and keep up to date with current qualifications and contact information. Let me give you a little peek into a day in the life of the CFSP. Recently, I met a family in our program who had received misinformation regarding what Head Start is all about. They are a Spanish-speaking family who the translator and I had been trying to meet with for the past several months. Mom would cancel each visit. She also canceled her recent parent-teacher conference. I did not give up on this family. The last time the translator and I called to schedule, Mom mentioned that a friend in another county in Colorado had told her that Head Start shouldn't be visiting your house, taking your kids. Are they coming to inspect your house?
Dear.
That was my first thought. Our translator had been working with me for several years and has great knowledge of what we do. She then explained that Liz is part of our family support group in early childhood. She is here to help you, Mama, give you resources, see how your daughter is adjusting in school. She is here for you. She said you could hear Mom's huge sigh of relief over the phone. We had a visit with this mom last week and a second one yesterday. Each lasted 2 hours. On our first visit, the mom said, we thought we would never be able to have kids, and here we are, older parents with 2 young children. We don't know what we're doing. I am lost. She began to cry and went on saying, I don't know anything about school, the district, what to do for next year. I have concerns about my son, who is 3. He isn't talking. Can he get into your program too? And how do I get my daughter enrolled from early childhood to kindergarten next year? I need a new doctor, and I have several medical problems that are not being taken care of. I never learned to drive. Can you find me a resource for driving lessons? We also need clothing, and our rent has been raised 3 times. It's now too high, and I don't think we'll be able to afford to stay here. We prioritized, we worked as a team, we used our district and our community resources, and slowly began to break down the barriers for this family. We now have the kids enrolled in school next year. An evaluation is set up for the 3-year-old as Mom has developmental concerns. I'm working to get Mom into a new doctor. We assisted Mom in placing a request for clothing for the whole family through the Thompson Clothing Closet, we all love. And they are now set up to begin receiving kids pack. I'm working on getting Mom a bus pass until I can find some resources for driving courses. This was a new one for us in my 5 years. This was a new one, and it just goes to show we learn something new every day in our job. I am also assisting in getting this mom an appointment with a bilingual housing navigator through House and Neighborly Service. This is what our job is all about, and strengthening our relationships with our community partners is key in supporting and empowering our families.
Thank you, Liz. Some of our Head Start families do not have a lot of practice with setting goals. Holly Nyquist is going to give you an example of how she assisted families in setting goals.
Thank you.
Part of our role is to meet with families monthly and to set attainable and meaningful goals with them to try and reach by the end of the school year. We help them with this by identifying the steps, providing resources they may need to achieve these goals, and checking in with them frequently to see how they are coming along with them. It is rewarding for us to see when a family meets their particular goal and when they are excited by it. We have many success stories every year with families meeting their goals, and these goals can range anything from learning activities with their children at home, behaviors, routines, finances, employment, parents enrolling in school, as well as countless others. Some of our success stories have been close to our program. We've been able to help 3 different moms recently achieve their goals of finding part-time employment with our early childhood program. All 3 were hired on as lunch aides. 1 is now a para, Shirley, and 2 of them are currently enrolled in school for their early childhood certification. They not only achieved their goals for employment, but this also helped them learn more from our curriculum being modeled in the classroom, and they were able to utilize these skills in the home with their own children, which has improved their own parenting techniques. This is just one example of how we support our families in setting and achieving their goals, and is also a great example of how we also helped our families with economic mobility. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. In addition to family visits, CFSP spent part of their week in classrooms getting to know the children, as well as offering support to the teacher and classroom team. Jen Dotson will share what that looks like. Thank you.
Whenever possible, CFSPs join the classroom for day-to-day activities as well as special occasions, field day, parties, those things. In addition to supporting the classroom staff and forming strong bonds with our classroom teams, the teachers and the parents and the lunch aides.
Right.
Spending time in the classroom allows us to strengthen our relationships with the Head Start families by connecting with their kiddos during the day. The students come to recognize the CFSPs as another trusted adult, and we get to know the students on a personal level. Being able to then share insights from the classroom with the parents during home visits reinforces the school-to-home connection, giving parents another window into what's happening at the school and giving them something specific to talk about with their children. There's a big difference, so you're all parents, between saying, how was your day? What did you do? Or say, hey, I heard that you climbed to the top of the tower on the playground. That's awesome. Tell me about that. And that really opens up those communication lines and reinforces that school to home bond. And again, I'm sure you're all familiar with all the research that shows that having parents invested in their children's education has fantastic results all the way through college, and that starts with us, and we're proud of that.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, board, for giving us the opportunity to share the great work we're doing in early childhood regarding family services. Do you have any questions for us?
Questions, board members?
Frank.
Amy? So is your team, well, first of all, thank you. I mean,
I want to give them,
is your team 5 or are there more than?
There's 5.
There's 5. And second question, do you call it a caseload? What is your caseload? Or what's it supposed to be and what is it?
Anywhere, well, like this year I have 37 families, so yeah, high 30s.
And is that what you expected? Or what you were told your caseload?
Talk about your previous job. I used to work for Child Protection Services. This is a lot less stressful. So I love what I do. I love this so much. It's rewarding, but without the stress of the child protection piece.
Just to visit families about every 4 to 6 weeks, and our safety protocol is they go in pairs. So not only do they have their own home visits for their 35, 37 families, they're also going on visits with their colleagues.
What are the items? And so
139 students in the Head Start program.
you would Head Start part. How long is the interview that you have or the visit that you have with him? I heard 2 hours.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say, it depends on what's going on with the family, for sure. We have our families who we check in with and, kind of get just some basic resources and see how things are going in the classroom and if they need anything. And then we have the families who, we need a lot more help. So, I would say maybe a typical 45 minutes to an hour-ish.
And that can be unique to each family. They can be great 1 month and the next month, there's housing or employment. So
It's not pattern change. Any other questions or comments? Stu?
I do have a question. I don't know if one of you will be able to answer it or if this is actually a question for Lamb. Are your positions totally funded by the Thompson School District, or do we get federal funds or grants or whatever? Yeah.
So this team
Land is
These positions are totally funded by Head Start.
by Head Start. Okay.
So it's Head Start families you visit. It's not all the preschool kids. It's
Well, then we do offer resources
I'm sure if they need it. Yeah. That's, you can tell, but you would do it automatically.
Well,
That's what your role is and the way you talk about what you're doing is. I just had, one of my teachers today just got a email from a mom saying, I just want to let you know, I just been diagnosed with breast cancer.
Cool.
And her first question was, would you feel comfortable if I told our child, then family service professional that? And she said yes, so I'll reach out.
I also want to say that we collaborate a lot with other professionals within Thompson School District. We work a lot with the McKinney-Vento team assisting families with homelessness. Ignacio Martinez, who's here, we work a lot with him. He helps us translate on the fly. The translation department is crucial for us to be able to do home visits with our Spanish-speaking families. So it really is a big collaboration with other professionals within Thompson School District. And we're so blessed and we appreciate that because that's not the case with every Head Start program.
Kate, Denise had a question.
So how do you identify the resources in the community and establish those relationships, maintain those relationships? Because there are, like you said, there's so many that is in your area.
Well, I'm on several different committees within the community, and so we have monthly meetings. Grand Family Alliance is one. Believe it or not, we have a lot of grand families raising grandchildren. We have something called Caring and Sharing. We have Shared Alliance for Youth. A lot of different community. We have committees within the community. We attend meetings every month, and then I meet with the team once a month, and we share anything new about any community agencies.
Great. You can Early Childhood Council.
Early Childhood Council is a big one.
Then we go on field trips to see new places just to learn more about new facilities. So
I just found it really informative to hear directly all the different things that he helped with. I mean, you hear Head Start, you just think oh, they're going to learn numbers and letters early, but it was good to hear everything else that you do. So, thank you.
thank you for
Alexandra?
Yeah, thank you. What you do is so important. So thank you for doing that. I have a question related to the interpretation services. Do you have particular interpreters who consistently go with you so that the families feel comfortable with them as well, or how does that work out?
If possible, yes. We like to have that consistency, but time-wise, they are extremely busy too, so it doesn't always work. But that's my first go-to if I've already had one come with me before.
And do you have any other options of interpretation services if there isn't somebody available to go with you?
There are a couple, like she mentioned, Ignacio, that works in our family center here at Stansberry. He just went with me on this family I was helping out. So he is a family engagement specialist, working a lot with the McKinney program as well. But he is available also, so he's not an official
interpreter, but yes.
We are fortunate enough as well to have a few paras. Like Shirley speaks Spanish, and then we have a couple of paras. I have a para at Edmondson that I utilize a lot. Showing this is Thank you so much for sharing all that you shared with us. It's just eye-opening. And I'm sure for I've been involved with PI, so I've been here a lot. But for everybody else to hear the power of what's happening in our early childhood. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Wow, huh? All right, we will run the rest of the meeting with the same thing where I'll try to remember where we started, stop as far as going around and getting questions. Should probably make notes so that I don't get totally lost in where we're going. Our first item will be, I believe, Melissa's introduced. Okay? It's with Head Start self-assessment report, and it's one of the ones that they do. So thanks.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and Dr. Shaver. Melissa Schneider, Chief Academic Officer. I'm here to introduce Lamb Caro, who you just saw, presenting with his wonderful staff, our Director of Early Childhood. He is doing our annual Head Start self-assessment report tonight, so it's something that many of you have seen in the past, so I'm just going to let you get right on with it.
Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to share the results of our self-assessment. Our self-assessment is something that we have to do annually, so I'll just dive right into the work. So when we think about how does this relate to STAR 25, it really touches on all of them, but in particular these three that I've listed there are ones that resonate with me and that rise to the top with our work. So if you go to the next slide. Self-assessment is really intended for us to take a look at our program every year to determine how we're doing, but in particular, we want to look at how are we making progress on our objectives, are we supporting child outcomes, are there any compliance issues that we need to address, and more importantly, as you heard from earlier with that group that presented, what are some strong practices that we can share with other programs? And for us, it's more importantly a chance for us to do a course correction if we need to, if something's not going the way that we intend for it to go. So it's always fun to lead off with what our strengths are in our program, because we do a lot of good work, and I know, we tend to look at where we need to get better, but also it's an opportunity to share with staff about what our strengths are. And so we do have a really well-trained staff in terms of supporting kids with trauma, especially in Tier 1 and Tier 2 practices. We put a lot of effort into this year. Our health training typically exceeds what the health department requires of our program. So that's a plus for us because we know that we're keeping our kids safe. In particular, we're proud of our scope and sequence work that we've done with our essential standards, because if you're familiar with John Hattie's work in visible learning, we've been able to implement a lot of new practices in our program that we hope will make an impact in our kids' academic achievement over the course of the year. And again, I've shared information about the FA2 review, but we have several identified strong practices that we've shared with Head Start that they passed along to other grantees. So what I'd like to share is on the next slide is we start with, we have several domains that we look at, and so what I'm going to share with you is our objective for this year and then the result of it. So one of them is we have to keep documentation current for all of our kids, especially around health documentation, and that's a requirement of the health department as well as Head Start. And so one of the things that we did is that we surveyed our parents at the beginning of the year, and we actually implemented those methods right at the beginning of the year. So we were actually in compliance very early in the year, and we were able to maintain that compliance throughout the year because we continually enroll kids throughout. Last year I mentioned this too. We used to be a participant in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And so we were exploring that as another method to continue to fund our program. But because we already received funds from the state, we were ineligible to receive funds for that because they would consider that double dipping, so we chose not to pursue that any further. Safe environments we take very seriously, and so if you look at one of them was on active supervision, and the other one was on also what is our environment for our kids, is it safe? So with our staff, they created at the beginning of the year an active supervision plan that covers all areas of inside the classroom and outside. And then throughout the year, we took time at different meetings to give them an opportunity to revise anything that needed to be done. And we completed our safety audit of our playgrounds, and so we prioritized what was an immediate safety issue, looking with facilities. We were able to address those, and now we're on the second tier, addressing the next step of what needs to be corrected. So with transportation, we want to make sure that the kiddos are getting the same kind of support that they're getting in our classrooms. So we worked with them on providing positive behavior intervention supports to work with their new drivers. And so one of the things that we created videos to share with them, because we were all challenged to create that time so they could do the training on their own. And then we're going to continue to explore other ways of working with the transportation department to provide training around that. With our mental health services, ESS and mental health services, I should say, we are very focused on making sure that our objectives for our students with ESS services are very clear and that they follow the SMART goal format. And so during the school year, we provided feedback on IEP goals, and we provided whole staff training as well as individual feedback and training if they needed that. So we feel very good about the goals we create for our kids. We had a lot of things that we wanted to accomplish with our mental health services. So we provided a lot of social emotional training with staff this year. One of the things we had was we had Dr. Barbara Sorrell come and spend a day with us. And that was amazing training because it really shifted the thinking of a lot of our staff about how to interact with kids. We looked at it, exploring to add additional staff to support in the classrooms, and then finally creating a video with Hugs. And if you have seen our logo, Hugs is a little bear that is very cute, and the kids love them because they go home every weekend with our families. So as a result, we provided pyramid training for our staff this year, and we can see that we proved those specific days that we did it. We did hire additional paraprofessional help to support kids in the classroom, and it's really an ongoing support that rotates to classrooms that need it, so we can provide the teacher can work with the student to really support that child, and then we can diminish that support and move to another classroom. Then finally, we have 3 videos created with Hugs, and we're working to finish the remainder of them by the end of the school year. You heard a little bit from Julie about the positive solution for families. And so what they did this year was take a look at what worked, and more importantly, what strategies do they need to focus on families with during their home visits this year. So we're anxious to look at the parent survey results that we've sent out. We'll be taking a look at that, and we're expecting some really positive feedback from what we've been doing. In education, we've spent a lot of time working in our professional learning community. We also have talked about, we spent a lot of time on math, but also continuing to work on early literacy. And finally, in alignment with the rest of the district, we spent a lot of time with math this year. So if you remember last fall or last spring, I mentioned that we would do kids play math training, which we've done 2 days of training with our staff already this year. So as a result, as like I said, we've spent a lot of time with our PLCs, and I feel really good where we're at. And especially in the conversations we had around data, they're very rich. And then more importantly, when teachers are thinking about what's their next step with their kids, they have a very clear idea where they're going with them. With our scope and sequence, just so you know, we tie teaching strategies with the Colorado State standards. And then there's a thing called the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework. And we line all 3 of those to make sure that we want our kids are getting the results, or we want kids to learn what they need to know by the time they get to kindergarten. And then finally, with our kids play math, the trainings were awesome because what it was is more of a hands-on. And what you can see when you go into the classrooms, you can see the strategies being implemented. And the comments I hear are the kids are making great progress, and that's the part that we're really after. So, with our fiscal management, I continue to work with our fiscal specialists and business services to ensure that we're compliant with Head Start performance standards. And so if you'll recall last year, we had a Head Start Fiscal Initiative deployment where they gave us several things to look at and improve on our program. And so we've been working on that, as well as we've attended some federal grants programs, conferences with business services back in August and again in October. With our program design management, our what we're working on really right now is recruiting staff. You've probably heard that it's hard to find early childhood teachers. And so, and just to kind of paint a picture, usually when we're competing for one person, we're competing with all the surrounding districts and home providers and private providers for the same people. And if you know who I am, I'm a very competitive person, so I like to make sure that we get people, and I try not to jinx us too much, but I feel like we're in a good place right now for next year. And so we've explored different ways to recruit, and for example, I meet with students at UNC and CSU and different colleges throughout the year because we can start building connections early, and we have that early connection where they want to come to the Thompson School District. With our eligibility, recruitment, selection, enrollment, and attendance, so the big thing that we wanted to make sure is that the attendance policies and procedures align with the Head Start performance standards. And then more importantly, with the universal preschool starting last year, we wanted to make sure that we were able to identify students for Head Start quickly, because the system wasn't necessarily set up for that purpose, so we were able to come up with a system that allows us to do that. And so it's good, as you know, with the FAQ review, we are in compliance with the Head Start performance standards, and we work closely with our LCO to continue to improve or make sure that we're identifying students for Head Start. So the last part is our recommendations for the upcoming school year. So one of the things is that we want to make sure that we, as our program grows, we want to make sure that the process for collecting health documentation is sound. And so we are revising and re-editing to make sure that that happens regularly. And I feel good with the process we have now, but we'll really know in the fall when we start the new batch of kids coming in. With our nutritional services, we're looking at other nutritional programs to support healthy options at home. So we have a good program in place at school, and we want to build that connection at home. With our safe environments, we're continuing our focus on active supervision because we have 3- and 4-year-olds, and sometimes they don't know the rules and they like to explore different places where we're not. And so, again, the onus is on us to make sure that they're safe. With transportation, we want to make sure that kids who are receiving, or the kids that need transportation are getting it. And that's the most important thing that we are focused on. So what does that mean for what qualifying factors for those kids, and how do we make sure that that's systemic and provides the kids that need it, get it? For ESS, every now we need to update our assessment materials, and this is the time that we need to do it. And so this just shows what we're going to be updating for this upcoming school year to make sure that it's current. For our mental health, and this came directly from a lot of our parent surveys, we're going to provide more activities for social emotional regulation, problem solving, following safety rules, and so on. Parents want access to videos online, which was kind of a surprise. So, and this is something that we explored 5 or 6 years ago with CSU, but because it's coming from them, we're really going to try and move forward with that, because they said that although I would like to go, if I can do it at my leisure, that would be more conducive to my schedule. And then finally, the last one I'm more excited about is that parents would like to have a parent support group where we would facilitate but just offer an opportunity for them to talk and work together about their challenges and then offer solutions. So we'll be doing that this year.
Well,
And then finally, or not finally, with family and community services, we'll continue the refinement of our parent curriculum. And we're going to take again a look at our CFSP forms, if any revisions need to be made. So and I guess all this comes to is that in the spirit of continuous improvement, that's what we do. With education, there's a tool called the CLASS, and that's a classroom assessment for that looks at the interactions between adults and students. It's not looking at what kids are doing, but what we're doing with our kids. So as it relates, it says up here that due to the pandemic, a lot of things got shut down. And so we're working on how do we improve our class. And I should preface, we did really well in our class this year. But as always, we think we can do better. And so that our intent is to try and figure out how to do that support in our classrooms and more so with our staff instead of being reliant on others. With our fiscal management, we are really focused on fixing the areas of non-compliance, as is noted in the FA2 review. We have a very good, we're well on our way to doing that. Program design, the big thing is this is tied to growing the program, is we want to make sure that we're recruiting new staff as well as our special service providers. I'm sure you have understand that there's always a need for occupational therapists and speech language pathologists. And so we are looking at different ways to continue to recruit them. And then the big one for us is that with our demographic changing in our community, especially as cost of living goes up, we want to make sure that we give access to many families as possible to access the Head Start program. So we'll increase the poverty line for our families that program to 130% above the poverty line. So that is a lot of work in a very short amount of time that I've shared with you.
So those of you that weren't here for the meet and greet, we found out that they're anticipating 800
Yes.
students next year in the, 800. Yeah, and you have 600 right now about?
Yeah, 600-ish.
Yeah, where they all go.
So we have classrooms that are underutilized because this year we couldn't find all the staff to open them all. And so, like I said, I don't want to jinx anything, but we're in a good place where we are, I feel that we are going to have all the staff hired that we need to open those classrooms.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start over with Stu and just zip around real quick for questions.
All right. Couple of questions, Liam. You mentioned transporting the Head Start kids. How are they transported?
So a lot of parents live close enough. We try and keep them at their neighborhood school first. So if they can, a lot of them can walk. And what we're really trying to identify are the kids that need transportation. So sometimes we have to, because they're in Head Start, chances are families are both working, or a lot of times they don't have a car. So then we work with transportation to work the routes that they can get them on transportation. So they fill out an application form, explain their situation, and then we meet with transportation and our team moves them forward to determine if they qualify for transportation.
And then are they transported on school bus?
Yes, school bus.
Oh, okay.
So
with the older kids?
Yes. Well, not necessarily older, elementary students, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And the trick is, and I just want to put this out there, so sometimes we get parents who see a bus go by them. There's like an empty bus on there. There's like 10 elementary or 10 preschool kids on there. It's because we're limited by the number of restraints in our bus. So the students on a bus not only need special restraints, but there also has to be a ratio that's always met on the bus. So for every 8 kids, there has to be an additional adult.
It's
Yes.
my other question comes from the slide that dealt with ESS. So there were several things that you were hoping to purchase. One of them was Bracken, and I don't recall what the others were. Can you give me just a very quick explanation of what those resources are that you're hoping to purchase?
Yes, well, sort of.
I think it was just assessment.
Yeah, they're all assessments. So a lot of them, sorry. So they're all looking at behavior skills. They look at kids' functional behaviors at home and at school. And so essentially each tool is gathering information about how the kids function in social settings, academically, where they might be. And then, so a lot of it's a parent questionnaire where they fill out questions where it might ask, does your child get frustrated easily when playing, or do they get along with other students, or those kinds of things. So they're all intended to provide a comprehensive look at the student before they get to us, so we can have a sense of where they're at and what their needs might be when they get to it in the classroom.
Thank you.
Nancy?
I thought it was fascinating all the requests from the parents. So when they're asking for these online videos, what topics are they wanting?
So a lot of them, I don't know if you've seen some of the signs that we have around the building, like put your phone down.
No.
So a lot of times some things they just don't know. And so we started with kind of like a basic workshop to offer different topics that they might have questions. So for example, how do you support my child when they're having a tantrum?
Oh,
So we'll provide ideas of what they might do, and so we'll say like sometimes they just need to be heard, helping identify what their emotion is, and then offering different strategies to how to cope with it, and then more importantly, equipping the child with those strategies to cope with it on their own.
goodness.
Good. Alexandra?
So I have a question about the enrollment and that expanding the eligibility up to the 130% of poverty line. How are you allowed to do that? Like, aren't there very strict regulations that come from Head Start?
And it's in the regulations. That's what allows us to do it.
Okay, and they what's the leeway they give you? Is it based on like cost of living and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
so they send us the annual poverty line level.
Okay.
And then there's a chart that comes with it that gives you the different scales of where you can qualify for students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any sense of how many, more kids will become eligible with that, or is that a?
So currently, we haven't had to go into that category yet. So right now, we fill it as their straight qualification. So part of it was done in anticipation of. So this year, we were getting to the point where those kiddos were rising to the top of qualifying for the program. So it's done as a proactive approach to make sure that we keep our slots filled.
Amy? About maintaining health records, keeping things up to date. Does early childhood utilize the health office at the sites, or do you have your own through Head Start combination, or?
Yes. So we do use a lot of resources here and in the community.
Okay.
Yeah. So particularly as the one, sorry, I forget the name of it. We work closely. What's the name of the to one player? Sunrise. Yes. Yep. We use that a lot because, especially for our parents, we can direct them there. They get a lot of the service that they need for us to get things done. But we also connect with a lot of medical providers in the community.
Sure.
They have a scale that they can work with our families to get the physical and the electromagnetic testing that we have to have done with their kids.
What about the record keeping? Because you were talking about.
Oh, we do a lot of our own record keeping. That is actually a full-time job for us because we enroll kids throughout the school year.
Okay.
So we don't stop. Generally, most kids are enrolled at the beginning. But once a child qualifies and turns 3, we can enroll them all the way up until May.
Okay.
So it's the onus is on us to make sure that we have those records because that's also tied to licensing.
ED.
And licensing requires those health records to be in place before the student starts.
Okay. Are we just asking one, or do you have more questions? Okay, go ahead. Just curious, the training for transportation. What kind of specialized training do especially the drivers, I guess, get in learning how to interact and deal with, say, with the child who's having a tantrum and won't get on or off the bus?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll do one-on-one if we have to,
Okay.
because sometimes that's the best way just to do it, because we also know what works best with that particular student.
Okay.
So we'll do that, and we'll do the general training with them, just to talk about how do you interact with a child when, with using the same practices we use in the classroom that they could do in
Just
class.
similar language.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Cool. Thanks. Denise?
So you said 600 and then the 100 some or 130 some are private Head Starts. What are the other kids in the program? How's that?
Yeah, so percentage-wise, well, no, I'm going to do that. So out of that, probably 300 and some odd students are special education. So they qualify for ESS services based on from early intervention. Plus, when they come into our program, we notice some things about the students, so we'll do an evaluation or qualify them through that. But we have a lot of students through the Universal Preschool program right now, and thinking into next year, that's where a larger number of our students will come from. Right now, we were creating our class list for next year already, and we have almost 400 already placed for next year, which is far ahead of where we would be at this time last year. So, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Who about those, Don?
Oh, Dawn, I'm sorry. She's in that little box over here.
I have.
Dawn, did you have any questions?
Go to next session hands.
She was thinking. No. Dawn, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Do you have any?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say thanks for how thorough all this is.
Of course, it's been really good. All right. Anything else, Dawn?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Graphic. Board folder.
Just hands up. Wait. Our next item is also Head Start, but it's dealing with fiscal policies and what. Go right ahead.
Like that.
You can have my seat, Gordon. Hi, Gordon.
Good evening.
It's just he told them, yeah. Awesome. They should stay. Thought I'd let you to have the stage.
Thank you, Melissa.
Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, I'm Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. Lam and I both come before you this evening with this item, which really could have been, and it was, parts of it included in the previous presentation. But the requirements are that a separate policy has to be adopted. That's why we elected to treat this as a separate item. I will provide an overview, and Lam will correct anything that I may say that is incorrect.
It's your chance.
Part of the FA2 review process that we had conducted last fall, that Head Start conducted, identified several areas of, as you see the phrase non-compliance that you saw in the last presentation, that certainly were non-compliant items, but is not a deficiency, which is a much more severe item for from Head Start's perspective. So from the fiscal management side of things, there were a few findings that were noted as non-compliant. As I mentioned in a previous presentation, the majority of those items had already been corrected by the time the audit took place, but the audit was for a specific time period. So they were looking at that, and they've been corrected after the review period that Head Start was looking at. So a lot of those have been, like I said, already corrected. Many of those being the request for funds, the tracking of funds that were due, reconciliation of those, the drawdown of the dollars that were available to us for reimbursement, a variety of circumstances that created that, but that had already been corrected by the time the review took place. But the review was for a specific period, that's why they were noted. And the reviewers noted that much as well in their reports. But one of the items that they said was a requirement was adoption of a fiscal policy manual for Head Start. We have just recently created this document that is attached to board docs for federal grants in general, and we are proposing this to Head Start for their consideration of that this would satisfy the need for Head Start as well, Head Start being a federal program. It's a very regulated area. Obviously, any federal program has a lot of requirements to it. And in this fiscal policy manual, as you look through it, I'm not going to go through it page by page tonight. I know to everyone's disappointment, but there are multiple items in there about procurement. Procurement is a big area. Timesheet reporting, tracking of fixed assets, having contractors, for this building, the work that was done on this building with a significant Head Start grant, having to file a federal interest in this building. So I think that's important for the board to realize and the community to realize as well. While the district owns the building, there is a federal interest that's attached to it because of the substantial dollars that were part of the renovation of this space as well, which is fine. There's no worries with that. But that means before the building, not that we have any plans to do this, but before the building could be sold, we would have to return the federal interest portion. And one thing that Lamb mentioned that there was joint training or training that we went to jointly. Lamb's team, business services, I attended this training as well, that said it's not just returning, say, the $2 million that were the award for the renovations on this building, but any appreciation of the value of the building in that $2 million as well for that proportionate share. So that was an interesting item that took us some time to figure out how to file a federal interest after numerous trips to the courthouse and everybody at the courthouse saying, we don't know what this is. We don't know why you're here. I think it took 3 or 4 different trips to finally find the right person to get that filed. But we are in compliance with these items. This is brought forward for your consideration at the next meeting for approval. The reason it's separate is because it requires board approval of the policy manual. Lamb, anything I've missed
Yeah,
out?
you're very concise.
Okay, starting with Nancy. Question?
Well, you answered it because I was going to ask, wait, how much is the federal interest? But you said $2 million plus selling appreciation. So, like, you know what I'll do? I'll do you a favor. I'll read it tonight for a bedtime story. For the next,
Allowed to Robert, right?
oh yeah, he'll love that.
Alexandra?
Enjoy.
I have a couple of questions. One, I think you answered, but I just want to clarify that this manual is not specific to Head Start. This is for everybody. Well, we're hoping Head Start if they approve it, right?
That is correct. This is intended to be a recently released document for federal grants broadly, which could be the ESSER programs, title programs. They all have, and the statute is reflected on each one of the items that's in this manual. At the training that we went to this summer, there were numerous items where, and it was federal programs training, but then they would say, okay, this particular item, this is the way it is. Except Head Start could be different, or Head Start is different in this area. So we have or are planning to send this document on to our regional contact within Head Start to say, here's the policy that we're bringing forth that we want to get board approval on. Will this satisfy the requirement, the finding that was in the FA2 review?
Okay. And then my second sort of related question is, if this is a brand new document, what were people doing previously to make sure that they were in compliance with all of the grant requirements?
All of the things that are in here in this document already that just weren't in a formally adopted policy manual.
Okay.
The district was operating under all of these statutes that are in place. We just didn't have the document that had been approved by the board to say we were doing that.
Amy?
So thank you.
Denise? Only thing I asked, will this be approved by Head Start before we have to vote? Or will that not be exactly?
No, the fact that we're here at this point means that we're in a pretty good place already.
Okay.
Yeah, so it
Thank
shouldn't
you.
impact the debate.
Okay.
No
Still-
questions.
Okay.
What about
Thank Oh, Don. I'm sorry. Speak up when I forget. Everybody's, yeah. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At least.
Right, Dawn, sorry. Thank you for helping me remember her. All right, the next piece is 4.3 middle school science curriculum adoption.
What's that? The thing is saying to guys.
Well, that was on the last. No, that was on the last week. If you look at your, it's right on here. That's we already approved that. So
No.
sorry, I just didn't get it deleted when I picked that up today.
Okay, hi. Hi.
Good evening again, Madam President, members of the school board, Dr. Schaefer. Tonight I have with you Tiffany Miller, who is our Director of Curriculum and Learning Design, and she will present to you our process that you have heard before, but we are proposing to you a curriculum material adoption for middle school science. We have some very good reports to share with you tonight. Her team does a great job of collecting data and piloting materials, so I'm just going to let her take it away.
Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, and tonight I'm Tiffany Miller, Director of Curriculum and Learning Design. You are looking behind me. These are actually our middle school science CECs, which are our curriculum coordinators. And then we have our science specialist that is on our team up at District Office, Larissa Clark, who has been really heading this adoption. And so we will go through our presentation. Our Strive 2025 connection is here. And then you will see our definition of a GVC, like you have seen in the past. So we are going to start a little bit about why consistent materials happen. And so we know that consistent materials matter because grade level standards are being taught. Students are getting the opportunity to have a hands-on experience no matter what class they're in. And teachers are then able to speak the same common language no matter what school they're in or grade level they're in. So when we come together and collaborate or have a PLC, they're having the exact same conversation. So I highlighted you our process. And so when we think about this process, it started way back actually in September of 2021. And it was determined that middle school science certainly had a need for an adoption. And so the team came together, they started working on their core values, they started reviewing programs that met the core values along with the state standards. And then they really started looking at the second part of our process of how do we develop our own GVC and what materials out of the many selections meet our guaranteed viable curriculum, what meets our state standards, but also what meets the vision of Thompson School District for our middle school science classrooms. So you will see here that in the spring of 2023, the programs were identified. They narrowed it down to two, which were Discovery Ed and then HMH for 2 trials. We started that trial recently this fall with Discovery Ed, and then the second trial we did was HMH, and then we just wrapped up all of the data. So the great part is that we had every single middle school science teacher trial this year. And so I want to say that because that is a huge piece of this trial is we really wanted to work with all of our teachers across all of our middle schools. So it definitely was not an option because we wanted their feedback and we wanted their input. And so I give huge kudos to our teachers for diving in and trialing this, but I really want to make sure that we highlight that every single teacher was a part of this trial. And then they also had access to our vendors and participated in training from our vendors, so they knew how to use the materials. And then they also had that access to all of the online print materials and students' materials that were provided by the units. So I wanted to show you their vision because when you look at those 3 big words of collaboration, engagement, and curiosity, that's really what they used as their guiding light, if you will, when they started diving into the materials, because those were the 3 things that they really said we need to make sure whatever curriculum we use, these 3 things are a key component to no matter which vendor we're looking at. So I have for you on the next slide our student responses. And I put this one in here because, again, it is a huge tribute to our teachers that no matter what material they trialed, it didn't really make a difference with our kids. And so when they're using our materials, they gave it a very neutral, unbiased trial period because, one, they're middle schoolers and they're not curriculum. They understand materials and what's engaging and not engaging for a student experience. But I want to make sure that everybody sees our teachers were not swaying them one way or another. And so this graph really shows that it was a very neutral, even, fair trial from our teachers to our students. And that is a huge highlight of our teachers. So we have our teacher responses here. And so this is also listed in your Appendix B. When we look at teacher engagement, going back to one of those key values, When you compare our Discovery Ed compared to our engagement, that is a large difference. And so something our teachers value is our students being engaged in science. This is the results that they provided for us. So I have a few quotes from our survey from our teachers. I certainly know you can read them, and so I won't read them. But again, you will see in your appendices, we listed every single teacher response. And so we didn't pull out anything. We didn't sugarcoat anything. We wanted to make sure we gave you exactly what our teachers said. Overwhelmingly, they really had positive results to share. And they would be probably disagreeing with me if I said that, and that wasn't their thought, but it really was overwhelmingly positive for HMH. So it is our recommendation based on teacher feedback, student participation statements, and the alignment to our TSD vision for middle school science. We are recommending that HMH science dimensions for the adoption of for middle school science for the grades 6 through 8 tonight. So I have highlighted here what the cost would be, and I did a 1-year comparison and then a 5-year bundle. When you look at the comparison of what it includes and not includes, one thing that I had Larissa bring with us tonight is part of this HMH proposal is giving teachers the kits and the materials that come along with the units. And so similar to science, how they have FOSS kits where teachers have the materials with them, middle school and secondary is a little bit different. What we're seeing our teachers do is they kind of scrounge up anything at their house maybe or in their classroom to do a lab, which is wonderful. This provides it for them. And so the kits that we are looking at purchasing are all being given to our teachers. And so the neat part is that all students will have, again, a very similar experience no matter which class they're in or which school they're in. We also did a 3-year consumable. Those are those materials like the cotton balls, the toilet paper rolls, anything for the lab. That would be for 3 years, and here's why. We want to know exactly if our standards change. Will these kits be updated with our standards? However, we also want to know that our teachers are still invested in the cotton balls and the materials. So at that point, we can renew if we so choose. But we really felt like that was a good solid time period to give us some insight to those materials and those kits. The other piece I want to show you is this HMH proposal includes 16 hours of an in-person coaching for our teachers provided by HMH. We've heard such success with our ALN work and our math this year. We want to model something similar with this HMH coach who is a science specialist from the company that would come in and support our teachers in real time. So should we move forward with this, our next steps are to put forward a May training date with HMH, purchase those manuals and materials to ensure that our teachers have that access before they go on summer break. We're really working with our teachers so they get everything before break and not after, because that was one of their big questions of how do we get our eyes on it earlier on. And then make sure that our summer opportunities for our teachers to come together and collaborate and start planning, and then develop that timeline for what PD would look like between the fall and the winter through that asynchronous and that coaching time. And then our teachers actually asked if they could continue using HMH for the duration of this school year. It absolutely does. So I want to just say a huge thank you to Larissa. Greg Simons also is on our team who helped put this together, but more importantly, our teachers that are in the classroom trying these materials, our CCs here who bring back that information to their teachers, and really diving in and giving this a fair trial. Also, our middle school principals who gave us input, our executive director of secondary schools, Theo Robeson, who happens to be here, and then, of course, Dr. Melissa Schneider, for really allowing us to get the right materials in the hands of our teachers. So,
Tiffany, I know you did a great job getting feedback from staff and students. I know that the materials were on display for parents and community. Can you comment on that too?
They were, and actually the community comments were in the appendices as well. There were a couple feedback pieces. I'd have to pull up the student quotes. Nothing that would be surprising. some community quotes.
Thank you.
But yes, absolutely. We put it at the Berthoud Library, the Loveland Library and District, and everybody also had access online through the district website to go on and look. So it was out there, definitely. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Let's start with Alexander. Question? Amy?
No, but thank you for a comprehensive, evaluation, presentation, everything.
Thank you very much. Denise? Yes, please. I didn't have any. Dawn? Questions on the science?
So just thanks. I am really excited about the fact that they want to keep using it through the end of the year, and the package makes so much sense. Like, it's so obvious, and it's really nice that everybody got a chance to participate. And I love that so much, considering some of the other challenges we've had with other curriculum adoptions, where it gets you get different feedback from different groups. This is really nice.
Thank you. Stu?
When Dr. Schaefer asked the question about community input, I just happened to be looking at page 9 in the appendix because I was going to ask a question about that. I noticed that there isn't much community input. Is that all there was? 1 comment on discovery and 3 on HMH? That was it?
That is correct.
Okay. That was my question.
Nancy?
I just want to, because I remember from the English curriculum, and then also from when you presented at the Mill Levy Override Committee. So the cost that you showed up there, the 514, whatever, when it comes budget time, we're not going to see an additional cost show up in professional development, kind of like we did with the ALN for the 300,000, because they're saying they're going to, the 16 hours in person is part of the 514.
Correct.
How many teachers will that cover? All the ones standing back there?
All of the ones standing back there, and then each of the science teachers in the middle schools, along with our K-8s.
Okay. And then the cost also is all of the consumables, besides the lab kits, but like any of the print consumable materials.
All included.
All included. How's that work then? No, I mean, compared to what the English is. So, good job. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Jones, I believe, thanks to Margaret as well.
Yeah.
I'm giving kind of Tiffany all the credit that's
okay.
Yeah, the teachers that evaluated and made the best decision for students, which also happens to be the best decision financially for the district.
Great.
And it's a win-win.
Mark?
So I appreciate we have staff members that have come. Is there, just because you're here, do you have any testimonial or any just comments? We want to honor that you're here. Thank you. Is there any? Sounds like I don't want to speak for the board. It sounds like there's high favorability as well. But anything you'd like to add?
Just the big thing is a huge thank you to Larissa for leading us through all of this, because really we could not have done this without her. And we really appreciate everything she's done for us through this entire thing. That's her big name. Open the list.
I didn't tell her. Thank you for all. Thank you to all of you coming out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, sure. Okay. Thank you. Nice job.
Yeah.
All right. Next item, 4.4, is the 2024-2025 Thompson School District Organizational Chart.
Wait, dude, goes like that. Wait,
I'm getting what's up.
On the President School Board, Dr. Schaefer, Bill Sievers, Chief Human Resources Officer.
Are you in a hurry?
Well, I'm trying to save time, so I can slow down. Slow down. So this presentation will cover Strive 2025 as human talent to ensure recruitment and retention of high-quality staff. The presentation will connect to human talent by discussing the goal statement and the district organizational chart. Thompson School District will invest in teachers, leaders, and support staff to ensure we create the most impactful learning conditions that enable students to reach their full potential. TSD will be a destination of choice for individuals who are seeking a rewarding profession that empowers and inspires them to become difference makers. Thought that was pretty important to say. So this conversation with the district organizational chart is there's board policy CC, and superintendent is the chief executive officer of the board and is responsible to the board for all that transpires in the school district. The district has 4 major divisions: student achievement services, business services, operations services, and human resources. The legal authority of the board shall be transmitted through the superintendent along specific paths from person to person as shown in the board-approved organizational chart of the district. The lines in the chart shall represent the direction of authority and responsibility. So we've kind of revamped it over the last few years of what the old chart, just the format of it. So tonight's discussion is the district organizational chart and recommended changes. Okay, so enhance positions from Chief Operations Officer to Assistant Superintendent of Operations, from Chief Academic Officer to Assistant Superintendent of Learning Services, from Chief Human Resources Officer to Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. And I'll pause there for a second and just point out to the board, those are enhanced title positions, but there's zero cost to those positions. So I just want to highlight that part. There's zero cost to those positions.
So you have to work more for the same.
We are here to serve We are here to serve the board and serve our superintendent and make this a destination place. So for us, we're here to do whatever is needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Schaefer gave me that to say right here, so I just look at him and say thanks. And that's our superintendent's division with those positions. The next 3 positions, basically, they're discussions we have. Like there's a budget team that talks about positions in the building, and then cabinet has discussions about their department and certain areas that need support. So that's what the enhanced positions are. So if you look at the next one, risk management and benefits manager to risk manager and benefits director. So that's an HR position. So just the overwhelming need of things in human resources, that's an enhancement position. And then from innovative technology services, IT infrastructure manager to innovative technology services director. So that's an enhanced position as well. We have a retirement in that department, so it gives an opportunity to enhance it. And the next one is the new position, the special education assistant director. So the need in special education right now, there's a huge need in there. And at one time we had, these positions, and being in the position like in the district for the last 23 years, like I've seen a lot of things a long time. And the district has had assistant superintendent positions. They've had deputy assistant superintendent positions. They've had assistant director of special education positions. So along the way, positions have gone out, and then there's a huge need to bring some of these positions back, just because the amount of work that takes place in each one of the departments. So I will pause there and answer any questions of discussion from the board.
Okay, Amy, thank you, Alexander. Amy, the first two issues. Good. Ace?
Just thanks for being.
I have just one question. Some of us got an email today, and it was talking about the new special ed assistant director, and that there were 4 ESS coordinators. And so is it a possibility that when that position is posted, all 4 of them could apply for that position? Or somebody could come in from outside?
I think depending how it's posted, right?
Okay.
Because the director and executive director will have a discussion what that looks like, and they have an opportunity through human resources. That position can be posted internally, or that position can be internal and external.
Okay, so I just was curious regarding the email that we got. So
Right. Yeah. So
I
there's
just
a
wondered
choice on how to post it.
and how it comes up.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Don, any questions?
I do have a couple. They're like adding on to what you just asked, Barb. So I am wondering what the process will be for all of these. And since it sounds as if there's like decisions still to be made, is there any way that we can get an update to know when there's been a decision on how we're posting in the process? Since they're big positions, I'd love to know that. And then I'm wondering if we have any plans to look at other positions. I know it's constant, but I really would love to have some review, I think, or an update at some point in the future on some of like, maybe like a high level analysis of some of our positions. Like, this was raised to my awareness because there's other districts that have something like this and we don't, right? And so I'm wondering if there's other things like that that we should have on our radar for the future. And also I know that there's, like, I've had some questions around just sort of how we do this. And so, like, more of an update on sort of the state of some of these bands. Like, when you look sideways, I know you went through and helped us with kind of the big high-level building decisions, but I'd also love to understand, like, what makes some of these positions different than others, right? Like, what's the benefit of the assistant superintendents versus the cabinet position we currently have? Those kinds of things would be really cool to have.
Okay.
Not today, clearly, because that's not fair.
I was pausing and looking around at everybody to see what discussion, but yeah, well, we can continue that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Stu?
Bill alluded to this, but I'd like to just share with folks who are here a couple of the comments that I made yesterday when 2 or 3 of the board members were present with the APT staff. I taught at the district. I was an administrator for a number of years, and I'm used to the job titles assistant superintendent. When I retired, I didn't pay really close attention to what was going on in the district in some regards, and one of those changes that happened since I retired had to do with a change in nomenclature of some of the people who had been called assistant superintendents. So when I decided to run for the board and I started to try to get up to speed a little bit more in terms of lots of things with Thompson School District, I found that there were people in positions called Chief Academic Officer, Chief Human Resource Officer, Chief Operations Officer. And I wondered what happened to the assistant superintendents and if these were new positions, but primarily what happened to the assistant superintendents. And then as I continued my research and conversations, I discovered that they were the same people. And where I'm going with this is I think that a lot of people in the public sometimes can accuse people in education of having words and names that nobody understands. And I just think that moving to the leadership positions, the 3 in particular that are going to be now called assistant superintendent as they were before, it makes a lot of sense to me now as a citizen. I suspect it will make a lot of sense to people in the community who are certainly familiar with what an assistant superintendent of instruction would do, but might not know what a chief academic officer would do. On the fact that these changes are all cost neutral. I think we can improve communication, we can improve understanding, and we're not changing the bottom line. So for those of you who had to hear my spiel yesterday, I apologize, but I did want to share that with the public because as an individual board member and a member of the community, this makes a lot of sense to me to go this direction. So thank you for indulging me.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Yes, and my questions are also centering around the email. So I look at this, and there's currently 5 coordinator positions, and they're each assigned to a school. So with this new position, because it's being called new, a couple things. One, does that mean that whoever of these 5, when they move up to this new assistant director, will we then also replace a coordinator? If this is really a new position, and will the 5 current coordinators, will this position at least be posted internally so that if any of the 5 want to apply for it, they can?
So, having our director and executive director having that conversation, it's most likely that position is going to be posted internally, and then see who's applying for the position, going through the process, and seeing who gets selected from there. And then basically what you do is when a position is hired, then you're really reevaluating the other positions as well.
So if we fill a new position with assistant director, does that mean the coverage for all these schools that's currently spread amongst 5 would be spread amongst 4 coordinators with this assistant director overseeing them?
That's what the job description, depending what direction the board is going at the next board meeting about approving this, then that gives an idea. Okay, so the position is approved. Then before it's posted, let's really look at what the job duties are. So that information was confidential information that was not to be shared because it was a brainstorming idea. Because that copy that you have is not a finalized discussion that has been taking place in special education.
Okay, so once we approve the position, then they'll evaluate how they would accommodate.
Correct. That's a draft of what was sent.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Alexandra.
Can you talk just a little bit more about the rationale for these changes, the enhanced positions and this one new position?
So as far as the assistant superintendent positions, at one time, there was always conversation in the district of positions, right? So when our assistant superintendents took another position in a district, our past superintendent kind of restructured the district where he wasn't bringing back the assistant superintendents because there'd be a small cost savings because you're going from one range like range 20 to range 19. So then when you're posting those positions, it's a less dollar amount than the person leaving. So that's how the chief positions were created. And then, with the new superintendent coming in as well and the vision that Mark has for the future, it's looking at those positions of other districts because we do like a study to see, before this was even moved forward, there was a study done of, so what positions are in other districts? So a lot of other districts have assistant superintendent positions, right? So the vision of the superintendent was to enhance those positions that have assistant superintendents compared to a chief title.
Okay. And then the rationale for the special education assistant director, what's a little bit more about the rationale for it?
What's the need? Like it's trying to create layers, right? Because you have an executive director and you have a director, and then the format is you have coordinators. So just the need of the amount of work that our director is taking on right now, somehow we have to disperse that to a different position. Right, so that's when you're creating a leadership position of an assistant director, where it's not another director, because this position would report to our director of special education.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right. 4.5 is just information that. I'm sorry.
Lamb wanted to say something about the proclamation.
Lamb. You want to talk about the proclamation? Yeah, okay.
Do you need this?
Hey. People married.
Madam President.
All right. I'm going to let you take the proclamation away. You can proclaim.
Yes. Week of the Young Child this year is April 6th to 12th.
Right.
So we're kind of in that weird space of this meeting and the next one. So the intent was to bring it here to today.
But then we'll read it at
the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
And so tied to that, if you had a chance, you see all the handprints here.
I wondered if that was.
Those handprints is one handprint for each child in a program.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gives you a sense of how many students are in the programs.
Yeah.
So yes. So you can kind of see that we're doing really good work for our program and particularly for our kids. Because, it looks like flowers and we're really growing our kids into good people.
Yeah. Anything else?
So just wanted to bring this to your...
Yes, we appreciate that. And I was just going to ask for one of my fellow board members to read this next time on the 17th.
So if you are willing, Alexandra, you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to put you down because
I like young children.
it's been kind
And
of.
she likes to read.
And I like to read.
And it's just been nice to highlight to early childhood environment and being here tonight. So thanks for working this out.
Is there a way that during the meeting we can do have these handprint?
We can easily do that, yeah.
Technology-wise, that's an idea. Is that an option?
We can, we're at Berthoud in the auditorium, so we might maybe bring a sample or two.
Could we have? Yeah.
Let's do that.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 4.6 is just the standard action consent items. It's got 3 on it right now. There will be, I'm sure, we'll have the proclamation on there. There's donations, so that's just a placeholder for us so that we remember that. So now, we turn over all of this to Stu for a little while, because Stu wants to talk to us about legislative.
Yes, before I go into actually the meat of my presentation, let me just hit some highlights from the report that you have all received. We're now about 3/4 of the way through the legislative session. Legislative session is 120 days. We're at about 90 days one way or the other. Bills are now being postponed indefinitely, which is the kind way of saying in the state legislature being killed. More and more of them are being killed. Either because they don't have enough support, they're too expensive to implement, etc. The 6 that I included in the report are ones that I think are probably of specific interest to us, or they are ones that have been focused on at a Legislative Relations Committee meeting. The only actual change is in regard to HB 241039, which is the non-legal name changes. After passing the Senate on second reading with amendments, the Senate decided to postpone further discussion to a later time. I don't know what the reason for that was, but in looking at the status of that particular bill, we're now also at the point where bills are making their way to the governor for signature. A couple or 3 that I have mentioned in here. HB 241044, which is additional para-service retirees for schools, has now passed both houses and has been sent to the governor for his signature, and his signature is expected. Another one is Senate Bill 24017, distribution of state share of district total program. It has passed the Senate, also the House, and it's also now been sent to the governor for signature. I think it's important on some of these bills, and that's why I've included this in the report, for you to read input from Dr. Schaefer on a bill. There's also some feedback from Gordon Jones in regard to the one that I just talked about. A lot of the time, a lot of the interest, a lot of the news coverage now is about the 2 big bills that are in the Colorado legislature proceeding through the process, the long bill, and then also the School Finance Act. And I don't have anything more to tell you about those other than what's actually printed in the report. So, I mentioned earlier tonight, and you know as a board that I am a former teacher, and one of the things that I really have missed since retiring is giving homework. So, each of you has a packet.
When's it due?
Pardon me?
When's it due?
You're going to get that information as well.
Is there extra credit?
For some students, there will be extra credit, yes, if those students need it. So thank you, Marley, for doing the photocopying. We're actually doing this old school because I wanted to be able to hand things out to you and explain them to you while you could look at them. I direct your attention to the single page, which is entitled Legislative Platform Worksheet. What I would ask you to do, and this is between now and the April 17th board meeting, so there's nothing you have to submit before that. I would ask that you would bring this sheet back with you. You don't have to have 5 answers where 5 spaces are provided. You certainly can if you like, and if you have lots of ideas, fill in as many as you can, and then as much of the other 2 questions as you can. Also, I've given you samples from 3 other districts of their legislative platforms. And I would ask that you would go through those, underline phrases, ideas, etc. that you like. This is a process where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of samples out there, and these are 3 samples that I picked up at the Winter Legislative Conference. And so I would ask that when you come to the meeting on April 17th, that you have filled out the single page, as many of the answers that you can. Let me say also, in regard to the single page, local community issues, which is the first question, don't necessarily have to touch on education. They might, but they don't have to. So fill out as much of the single sheet as you can, and as a teacher, I always finish by just very quickly repeating what I had just told the students, so excuse me on that. Old habits are hard to die. So then to go through the samples, as I said, make marks, underline things, etc. And when we come back together on April 17th, we'll turn these pieces of information in, and Laura Lee and I will do some collating and some organizing, and then at a later study session, you'll see it again. So, thank you very much for indulging me in this.
Okay, everybody follow directions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So for this, the worksheet, do you want us doing that like individual work or talking to people? Not each other per se, but talking like to...
You certainly can. That's fine.
Okay.
You can either generate the answers to what are the local community issues and what are the local school district issues by yourself, or if you want to collaborate with someone other than other board members, because we do want to get board ideas, that's a great idea if you want to do that as well. Up to you.
Can we type the answers, or do you want them handwritten?
You do whatever works best for you.
You want me to type. I'm just going to type.
What I'm saying is, I'll be just thrilled to death with whatever information you provide, whether it's printed, handwritten, typed, whatever. I guess will be an important first step. And as Barb and Dr. Schaefer and I have talked, we think that being able to create the first draft of this is not going to be a monumental challenge, and that this is a logical first step, particularly using samples.
I can make this a Google Doc too, so they can either write them down or type, whichever you prefer, if you'd like me to.
We'll leave it to Laura Lee.
I like that you're doing this, Stu. As much as I'm not delighted to have extra homework, I think it's something that's important, and I think you're really doing a good job of getting us to do stuff in manageable ways and stuff like that. So I do really appreciate the efforts you're putting into this.
I appreciate that.
Laura Lee, will you send something to Dawn so she has this stuff, or are you going to be in the office with
I'll scan it to them.
Well, she'll scan it to you. Okay? Yeah.
Dawn, just because you're not here in person doesn't mean that you don't have a homework assignment, just so you know.
Okay? All right.
I will get an email from her about that.
I bet. Any questions for Stu? All right, we're going to move on to study session items. We just have 2. One is the site upgrade update. Did I say that right? Upgrade update. Okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Education, Dr. Schaefer, Todd Cody, Chief Operations Officer. All right, so tonight I'll quickly go through an update on some summer site modifications we're going to be doing to help with accessibility. So in alignment with Strive 2025, obviously this meets the needs of the students and community because this really attacks this entire area. So just a quick background. The district had an OCR audit in 2014 and 22.
So the goal of this audit, besides me losing hair, was to look at ADA and accessibility inside and outside. Previously, the board did discuss and approved dollars through savings to take care of a lot of the inside components of these audits. After further evaluation at the sites mentioned, so Berthoud High School, Lebanon High, and Thompson Valley, we're going to do some additional work on the outside of the buildings. So I'll get that in the other slide. But really what we did is we took the audit and said, okay, this is what we can do. What we're proposing tonight, really what we're starting to move forward with, is just additional upgrades to help the accessibility. So when you look at the 3 schools, these are the areas of work that we'll be diving into. So Lebanon High School on the upper left, the front of the school, so that is the west side. We're going to pretty much redo, I won't say the entire plaza, but the walkway into the front door. The parking stalls that were there at one point are going to get redone. So we'll have actually ADA access in 3 different entry points to the building. So we're really on this one here going above and beyond for our community to create this additional ADA access point. The upper right is Berthoud High School. You see the 2 squares there. Those are 2 areas that we worked with OCR on, so the Office of Civil Rights. And we're going to update and upgrade those spots to be ADA compliant as well. So we already have some in the front of the building that are compliant. We're going to do some site modifications there to make sure those 2 areas are. And then finally on the bottom is Thompson Valley. So there's actually a pretty significant amount of work that's going to be done there. That entire parking lot's going to get redone. Additional to that, yeah, it does have some potholes. I'll say some character. So the additional parking lot's going to get actually torn out and redone. While we do that, we're going to make sure that the ADA compliant spots that are both for the field access and the school access are upgraded, and there'll be a little bit of work done at the front of Thompson Valley. So tonight's a pretty brief and short presentation, but just want to get the board an update on what the plan is. You'll see there's a note that this is not coming from general fund, so this is coming from the payment in lieu of budget that is outside of the general fund budget. So I know Gordon would love to talk more about the pennies behind that, but yeah, these funds are already encumbered at the beginning of the year, so there won't be additional approval from the board, but want to make sure the board was aware that that's where this project or the projects will be funded from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have.
Thank you. Questions? I think it's Denise's turn to start. Didn't have any dots. Question? Yeah. Okay. Stu?
Just a comment, this is obviously very important that we get this done.
Thank Nancy?
Yep, this will address for Loveland High School, the one issue.
Directly.
Sandra?
So I have 2 questions. What's the timeline for these?
TV and Loveland are this summer.
Okay.
Berthoud's close. I'll say there's some permitting issues with the town that they were working through. But Loveland is this summer for sure. Thompson Valley is this summer for sure. And the best hopes Berthoud will be there, but it's a little tighter, I'll say.
Okay. And then my second question, I know at some one point there was a talk of like having to redo the whole Loveland parking lot because of its slope. But I'm assuming this, if you're just doing like the part at the front, and then are there going to be like stairs going down to the other part, or is that?
It's really going to be kind of the first row of parking that you saw in the aerial. It'll be taking that out, flattening it to make it more gradual, so there'll be kind of a little, I'll say a little step, but nothing that would be abnormal anywhere else. The goal is to just really take the slope of those spots that were there, flatten them out, and then make sure that path, that same slope, is consistent up the front door.
Okay. And the rest of the parking lot still being sloped?
Correct. And that, yeah, because that's not,
Okay. Well, I'm very glad you're doing. Thank you.
Hey. Thank you, Dad.
All right, yep, thanks.
Quick.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Final item is one I'm excited about. I think it's been an item that, after last week's board meeting, we're happy to hear a little bit more about. It's 6.2 student behavior update.
Thank you, Madam President. Board members, Dr. Schaefer, I have a team that is going to come up here. Let me just give them a second. We'll chair. Actually, that's the top one.
Let's see. I'm not seeing him. I'm sorry. Let's see. Later. I know. Almost sleep.
So tonight we bring to you a behavior update. We gave you one of these, actually looking back at my notes, about 1 year ago, almost as the day. So here is our behavior update for 23-24. I am joined by several members of both my team and operations team. I will let them introduce themselves here as we begin. You heard last week from teachers about behaviors, but we also have lots of things that we're doing proactively that we want to share with you.
Yeah.
And be able to put some context to things. You can go on to the next slide, Laura Lee. So as one would think, in Strive 2025, our connection is both twofold. It's academic and it's climate and culture, to be able to have a sense of a good learning environment. And so we like to be able to tie in both Focus Area 1 and Focus Area 2 for this presentation. This group worked hard on an agenda that would be really relevant to right now. We want to talk about professional learning that's occurred to support Tier 1 ground level expectations for behaviors in classrooms. We have several responsive processes that we would like to share with you. We want to talk about the work of our Professional Concerns Committee, PCC. We also have a co-responder update and a threat assessment safety plan, just at a very high level for you all. So I will turn it over to you all. You all know who's doing the slides. You can introduce yourselves as you go.
Perfect. It's me. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, Sarah Rasmussen, Executive Director of Elementary Schools. So I will kick us off with this slide here, really talking about that Tier 1 professional learning. So many of you have heard us talk before about our professional learning communities, also known as PLCs. And what those are, it's the opportunity for teachers to come together, often led by a principal or an instructional coach or another teacher leader, and they really dig into data and talk about students, each student. How do we meet the needs of each student? So they're looking at academic data, they're looking at behavioral data, and really trying to create lessons and units that address the needs of each student. So that's the purpose of those PLCs. They talk about kind of those benchmark pieces as well as that day-to-day data, which is so critical in planning academic lessons. So we continue to go through professional learning around how to have effective, impactful PLCs. And then we also, Theo, I want you to.
So I'm Theo Robeson, Executive Director of Secondary for our school district. And so the thing that I want to say when we think about cooperative learning is, so I just really appreciate the fact that our district's leadership has provided an abundance of professional learning for our teachers to have more job and better professional development. And so through our journey with cooperative learning, one of the things that we're trying to find is how can our students have more voice, choice, and agency inside of the structures, inside of their classrooms. And we try to find ways to help the teacher design their lessons that provide that outlet for our students to be more active participants in their learning and less passive participants in learning that's occurring. And so within the cooperative learning structure, some of the things that we've asked schools to build into their SUIBs is what's that continuous focus on that work. And then how do we also build our own coaches within our system in order to better support the learning of our teachers inside of our school buildings. So this has been a pretty positive thing that we have in the system, that if this is utilized to the rate of which we would expect to see it utilized, we would hope that this would help combat some of the negative student behavior that we might see in classrooms from time to time.
Then we also have been working with All Learners Network, so ALN is often how that organization is referred to. All Learners Network has been working with all of our elementaries and K-8s, and then there's been some work that they've also done at the secondary level. But the really the philosophy of All Learners Network is equitable access for each student. So they talk about the low floor, high ceiling. And what this organization does is they have given teachers tools on how do you plan lessons and what types of activities, all centered around Envision, math, that allow the access for each learner no matter where they are. So as we know, when learners are engaged and can access the concepts in front of them, it really helps them to pull them into the learning that's happening, so they're not focusing on the other things going on around them.
And from the middle school perspective, so one of the things that we've been able to do in our middle schools and K-8s is so our schools that are in priority improvement has had access to All Learners Network this year. And so one of the things, going back to like how do we structure our classroom design and better to support each student, is so they do activities such as, one of the cool things we saw is how they break out a concept in math and they help you kind of think about all the different ways where you could solve the problem. So then not one answer is right or wrong. So then all students that have different learning modalities or styles have an opportunity to incorporate that within their conversations within their students in the class. And the positive thing about this is, so when I think about the times when I get positive emails from teachers in the district about something, this has been a home run. Like the teachers are raving about how much they've been able to incorporate this, how actionable the strategies are that they see. And so I appreciate Sarah for bringing this into the system from the elementary level, because as we look at that vertical articulation across, it's good to watch our students have those equal opportunities to see some of the same structures and strategies as they go from pre-K-8 up to 12th grade. But this right here has been a super home run, and we're looking forward to next year where we have our I would say, our schools that are in performance or not in priority improvement or improvement to have access to this too. But even still, those schools that are in that priority improvement, they will go into year 2 with this work, while our other schools will go into year 1. But I will tell you, this has been one of the more phenomenal things that I've been able to see. And it's just those actionable strategies that teachers can use right away, and seeing that, especially like in our high schools, have been transformational. And so it's just been pretty powerful and pretty incredible to see. And students also rate and talk about this as well when I walk through classrooms. So it's pretty cool.
So, yes, so we are going to we have revisited a couple of different times the inclusive and supportive culture teams. So the work that has been done with these teams, they have chosen areas that they would like to focus on. So we have done attendance, we have focused on PBIS, and then we've focused on family, community, and school partnerships. And depending on the need of the school, they had an opportunity to really engage in this work, deeply engage in this work. And then their teams go back to their schools and disseminate the information through whatever professional learning they have chosen to do. And so we have really seen a great impact with this work into our buildings. Schools that have engaged in that PBIS and really have those strong systems and structures now in place has really made a difference in what's happening in our schools and creating that welcoming and safe school environment. Same with attendance. The amount of impact that these teams have had on attendance, which actually goes along with family school. I mean, it's all interconnected. It's making a huge difference in how we're able to think about other things than the academics, because the inclusive and supportive culture teams, that's what gets our kids and our families into our buildings.
Glam. And just to add on a little bit, it's like this has been one of those things where we've had a 3-year journey with this work, thanks to Dr. Guthel's leadership within the teams. And I will tell you, like, you're able to see stronger family and community partnerships take place in our buildings. And you're also seeing that it's focused on intensive discipline practices that we do here at the district level in support of this work. But then also we look at things like the attendance issues that we see across our school setting, and watching how we've been able to work with Dr. Guthels to kind of help us think through how can we be more positive in those approaches when it comes to attendance on the front end before we then start to have to strengthen our response on the back end. But there's just been a tremendous amount of positive work within our schools around this over the 3 years, and it's been a pretty nice journey to see how the schools have adopted a lot of these practices, even through positive behavior interventions and supports as well. We're able to see that, have a deeper dive in, and it's been positive to see how actually our high schools have been able to implement this, because sometimes like positive behavior supports and interventions may be stronger at the elementary or the middle school level, or through the work over the 3 years, we're able to see how that's transpiring more at the high school level as well.
And then the final one, new curriculum, it makes a difference. When you actually are bringing in new materials and you're looking for engagement and rigorous materials that align with our state standards, it makes a huge difference and gives teachers pretty amazing resources.
And the part that I would say about the new curriculum from the secondary perspective is that kids want to be able to see themselves in modern curriculum. And so one of the things that helps us with this is now we're actually putting more relevant learning opportunities through engaging curriculum in front of our students. And this journey right here, as Sarah just said, is as it's aligned with the standards. It's really challenging our teachers to ensure our students consistently have access to the grade level rigor, because we also know that the materials that have been adopted thanks to the board and Dr. Schaefer's leadership is always at the rigor of the grade level standard. And we also know that when we're not using our resources, but we're using like the teacher created resources, those are not typically at the grade level rigor of the standard. And so I think that this work is probably the most critical work in order to ensure we have more of a guaranteed viable curriculum that consistently gives all of our students across the system that grade level standard opportunity to learn.
Good evening. Excuse me, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, Jennifer Guthels, Director of Student Success here. So we know that if we have this excellent engaging instruction in our classroom, that's going to lower the need for responses to classroom disruption, school disruption, unsafe behavior, that type of thing. We've also come to you a couple of times and shared many of the other layers, right, of interventions and accommodations, the support, for instance, of our mobile behavior support team and those types of efforts. But we realized, looking back over our notes, that we hadn't had a chance to dig deeply into what happens when those things don't go the way that we hope, which unfortunately does happen. We're dealing with humans. So what I wanted to share with you are some of the responsive processes that we have in place. So I realized I should have linked these to board policy, actually, because all of these are covered in board policy and they're all based in state statute. So I am not, these are many pages long to explain all of the steps to these processes. I will not subject you to that, but I thought I'd just give you a high level idea of what these are. So the reason I wanted to start with the denial of admission per safe schools is this is a process that is in place under state statute to keep an eye on before students even enter the building can enroll in our district. And so under state statute, we are able to review their enrollment, and there's very, very strict criteria of when we can deny that admission. And if a school principal looks at the records from the previous school and feels it does meet that criteria, they reach out to me, I help them review that, and then they can request a denial of admission. What then happens next is essentially the expulsion process. And so it moves to a hearing and whatnot, just like an expulsion, and the decision is made if the student is going to be denied enrollment in our school district, and we can do that for up to 1 calendar year from the date that they attempt to enroll in our school district. This is rare, but which it should be, right? I mean, we're here to educate the kids who live in our school district. But there are circumstances, where a student is expelled from another school district and the family moves to try to, see if they can get them into another school. So under state statute, we have the right to deny students who are currently expelled from another school district or who have been expelled within the last calendar year. As an example, some of the very, very strict criteria that this falls under. So there is board policy on this, but what you'll essentially see is it kicks into the expulsion process.
So the second thing on the list is the habitually disruptive designation. This is also in board policy and under state statute. And what that process is about is many of us have a fairly clear idea. Imagine something that would be expellable, and they're a big, major kind of one-time event, right? But sometimes what we'll have are students who are struggling with their behavior to the level that it is not only problematic for them, of course, but it is disrupting the learning environment so extensively that we have to do something, right? And so the state has allowed for what's called habitually disruptive designation. And what that's about is, again, there's a very strict list of criteria of what can be considered this. But if a student's behavior meets that criteria, that suspension is declared a habitually disruptive suspension. In state statute, what's next required is what's called a remedial discipline plan. That is not defined. And so because the Thompson School District, we really believe in intervention, we've defined a remedial discipline plan as a functional behavior assessment and a behavior intervention plan. We have folks in the school district who support our schools with that. So in the statute, the first suspension is declared habitually disruptive. There's notice required to the family and the student. The intervention plan is developed, and if another behavior occurs that meets that criteria, that can then be a second designation, and then a third. And after the third, then the school principal can request expulsion. And just like denial of admission, it then kicks into the expulsion process where there's hearings and all of those protections for our students' due process rights. So again, this is rare. This would be something rare to use, but it is there for those unfortunate cases where, despite extensive intervention from many layers of support in the school district, within the schools, the classrooms, the counselors, behavior support teams, all of those folks that we really cannot make it work. So then the last one, expulsion and deferred expulsion. Expulsion, of course, is also under state statute of what is required that and in board policy. And as I said, it's primarily designed to be for a major serious event. If a principal requests that, they have very strict things that they have to bring forward to support that request. And then again, it kicks into that hearing process, hearing officer, all of those steps. The deferred expulsion people are often a little less familiar with. And so what a deferred expulsion is that the behavior has to meet the criteria of an expulsion. It has to be expellable. The principal still has to request an expulsion, but they can then request that we consider what's called a deferral. And in those cases, we develop a contract with the family and the student that says, you agree with us that this is expellable, but we really want to give you another chance. So we are going to provide these opportunities. For instance, you'll work in Thompson Online for a semester, and you'll do these things. And then we'll come back together. And if you have done those things, then you're going to be able to come back to school underneath this deferred expulsion agreement. And if the student meets all those criteria, right, doesn't get suspended again, passes their classes, there's a variety of things we put in the contracts, then the expulsion is removed from their record. So while they're with us under deferred expulsion, if they violate that expulsion agreement, that deferred expulsion agreement, they are automatically expelled. So that's the trade, is that the family says, all right, we will agree to this and give up our right to the hearing process that's part of a typical expulsion in exchange for this second chance and extra support that you're giving our student. And so we've learned a lot over the years of trying to do deferred expulsions, of when they're successful and when really we're kind of just setting potentially a kiddo up to just end up expelled, which is of course the opposite of the intent of a deferred expulsion. So those are just some of those very high level intensive disciplinary responses that we might have to engage in if things are not going the way that we would like them to go for a student. Wow. I will not read this slide to you, but one of the things as we were preparing for this presentation that we got to thinking about was, we thought it would be interesting for the board to just have a glimpse at some of the things that a school principal or those of us who support our principals with student behavior might be thinking about. So these are the I'm trying to think if there's ever a time I've had a conversation with a principal about a student that they're worried about, where we literally, we have touched on every single thing on this list, right? So trying to be very thorough about all of the factors that are happening so that we choose the right next step, because the goal is to prevent the behavior from happening again. And so if we don't deeply consider these things, we're not in the business of just punitive punishment. That we all have read the research that does not change the behavior of anyone but a compliant person who would have stopped doing it anyway once these guys noticed it and wanted them to stop doing it. And so we do are very thoughtful and considerate. So this is just an example of the items that our folks working with students struggling with behavior would consider when determining next steps. And then I think this is one of the last slides you have to hear from me on, so thank you for your patience as I explain these things. We also just wanted to mention some of the discipline guidance that many of us support our school principals with. So we have what's called our discipline matrix, is kind of the shorthand term, and that is a tool that multiple administrators in our district have worked on actually for, 6 years? Yeah, for 6 years. We keep crafting it, updating it, and making sure that is what our principals need. And it's where they can come all in one place and say, okay, when a student has engaged in this behavior, this is the state code for that type of behavior. This is the levels of response that would be appropriate, the number of days of suspension, that sort of thing. But it also has for them ideas for interventions and supports. So all in one spot, they can say, okay, a student has been caught vaping at this school. The suggestions in the matrix for that would be these types of intervention, these types of supports, or these types of consequences. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop to help our principals have a good idea about how to respond, as well as to be in alignment with each other, because it's very important that we're responsive to individual behavior. Every student is unique, every situation is unique, but we do want to have some alignment across the school district so that when you engage in a behavior at this school and this other school, it's not the difference of no day suspension versus 10-day suspension. So it's also a tool that helps them with alignment. We, of course, provide regular training on school discipline law and best practices for reducing problem student behavior. We have a fantastic restorative mediation and practices specialist, Jody Wardlow. She can provide not only training to teams, like to schools about how to have circles, for instance, in the class, but she actually is now trained to the level that she can provide restorative mediation in very challenging situations. And so we are constantly looking at ways to help our tools help more schools to enhance their work with restorative practices, because we know that reduces the need for those disciplinary processes I showed you in the previous slide. We also have a team that several of us in fact, all of us sitting here tonight are on. I don't know where we ever came up with this name, but somehow we just started calling it the Intensive Discipline Team, and we meet every Tuesday morning, and it's really kind of a support team for each other and for our schools. Our school principals can refer a student to that team and ask us to come up with ideas, and we can also check in with each other and say, hey, I got this call for support. Teammates, what do you think we should do? So we also have a mental health team member who's not here tonight. We also have our court liaison and DHS liaison, Sue Reedbaum, is on that team, and so on. So it's the design of that team is to make sure that kids are not slipping through the cracks, and we're not missing out on connections that need to be happening. And then lastly, support calls. Really, I'd say everyone that's on that intensive discipline team, as well as other people, but one of the things that we do is we hear something that has happened and we call our principals and see what they need from us, and vice versa. They're dealing with a thorny behavior issue or discipline issue or anything like that. They know that they can call us for consultation and guidance support. And sometimes, it does happen that they call and we're like, wow. You think you've heard it all, and our students make sure that we have not heard it all. And then, of course, we can reach out to our legal counsel for advice and other experts that we have access to. So those relationships are very important in providing that support.
Excellent. So, my slide. Laszlo Hunt, Director of Special Education.
it wouldn't be special education presentation without a bunch of acronyms, so I threw them up there for you all to keep that flow going. So a couple of these things you already heard tonight. These are processes that are really specific to students with disabilities in our district. So these apply to students who are protected under IDEA or special education, as well as students who are on Section 504 plans. So as you're hearing this, think about those two groups of students. A functional behavior assessment was mentioned here a few minutes ago with Jennifer's team. Is a process that we go through when a student has a disability and we see behavior occurring. We want to get to the science of behavior. We want to get to the reason, what's the function? It's that old adage, if you can predict it, you can prevent it. So if we can figure out why it's happening, we can implement variables and changes. We have multiple different levels of an FBA that happen in our district. Teachers can do this at a level within their classroom, but we do have specific folks that I work directly with, including psychologists, social workers, and we have a board-certified behavior analyst, as well as a couple of interventionists that are able to go in and assist in schools when it's a high-level behavior. It also helps have an outside view of it, because the people that are working with that student day to day get tired, it's hard. And so having somebody come in and look at it from an outside view and give them just see what's happening, give them some ideas of intervention. And then that leads directly into bullet two there, the BIP or the behavior plan, which is developed as a response to what is the function. And so both of those live within the IEP world. We have those who are part of their IEP plan. They are also part of the 504 if the student requires that. This next bullet here, disability planning team, is a piece that Jennifer and I work collaboratively around with Joe's team. It's specific to when students have violations that fall within that school safety area. So a student maybe makes a threat, or they bring a weapon to school. Like the things that we look towards, and you'll hear in a minute with Joe, around a threat assessment screen or a threat assessment or a safety plan for safety of the building. That really is complicated when you have a student who has FAPE, and we're required under federal law to provide them educational services. So this process that we designed is something we've trained our principals on, and the coordinators and folks that work out in our buildings, counselors, on how those two play together when they happen. So if we have a student that has a safety plan developed and gone through a threat assessment, the first step of that is we get recommendations from Joe's team on what needs to happen to keep that student safe and other people safe in the school. That's our priority, right? We want people to be safe. And then our team comes around, the disability planning team, whether it's 504 team or an IEP team, and they look at those recommendations, and when we look at how are we going to utilize the resources we have in our building within special education, general education, to implement those recommendations. And then we make decisions. And sometimes it does mean we have to place the student in a different location. And there's a timeline on this. We have a review period of 60 days. So anytime this happens, we review that every 60 days, a minimum, to determine, is this, how things change? Is the student ready? How do those two play together? And that's like a consistent back and forth between Joe's team and our disability planning team to really be responsive to keeping schools safe, but also providing student services. So ultimately, irregardless, we have to provide them services. So that's that piece, and that's newer. Like last year is when we developed real good guidance, and we've been training our staff around that. And then the last year is an MDR, or manifestation determination. This is in the IDEA, and this has to do with students' removal. And so when a student's removed under discipline, suspension, or recommended expulsion or deferred expulsion, we need to look at is this directly or substantially related to their disability? If it is, there's a pathway we travel upon, and involves reevaluating the student's needs, placement options, everything we do in the special ed world, or 504 world, sorry. If it's determined not to be a manifestation, student has a reading disability, but they brought a gun to school, may not find a connection between phonics and a gun. But if we've decided that's not a manifestation, then what happens is it goes down the other side of that pathway, which discipline can continue, which could look like continued suspension, the safety planning piece can kick back into gear, or the student may be recommended for further removal through expulsion or deferred expulsion. So, but that's a mechanism. The rule of thumb is 10 days. That's where we're at. When the students remove 10 or more days in a school year, we're required to do this from that point on and for any further removal. So it's not just a one-time reset the 10 days. It's day 11, day 12, day 13. So it's pretty involved. And once we get to that point, our school principals have some days to work with at the beginning. Students with disabilities can be suspended and removed from school up to that 10-day period, and then it moves into this process. That's a question that comes up a lot. Like, can we suspend a student with a disability? And it's like, you can. I mean, there's conversation. I love that slide that you had, because there's conversations you want to have, but it is legal, and this is the process then to follow if it becomes a pattern or exceeds 10 days.
So because we had a series of 2+2s with the board this week, I won't spend too much time on this slide, but Professional Concerns Committee, also known as PCC, we mentioned that in our 2+2s around the behavior support and the conversations that are being had on this committee. So it is a negotiated agreement that we have the Professional Concerns Committee and also what our charge is. Our charge this past year in the 22-23 negotiations was to study undesirable student behavior. So we meet monthly. Actually, there's another meeting tomorrow night, and we are going through the interest-based process of being able to just actually get story, get interest, what could impact the problem. We are still in the middle of those conversations and really just gathering a lot of information to be able to move forward with some recommendations. So that is a monthly meeting with members of the TEA, as well as Dr. Schaefer and Dr. Bill Siebers and myself and 2 board members on the committee.
All right, I'll start with the co-responder update. My name is Joe Vajansky. I'm the Director of Safety and Security. Good evening, Board, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer. Before I get going on that, I actually brought some guests tonight. I have my program supervisors in the back, Megan Lazinski and Jen O'Connell. Then I have Deputy Solano and Clinician Sylvester. That's one of our teams. As you can see, we have 2. And Sergeant Brian Bartness, who's in the back, who's representing Loveland tonight. So if the board has questions for them when we get to that point, you're welcome to ask. That's why they're here. All right, next slide. All right, so here's kind of a high level. I'm not going to read, but here are the 3 areas that we ask our co-responder unit to look at as they respond and intervene with student behaviors. The biggest thing here is that after they do this work, and they're doing great work, I think as you'll see on the next slide, we ask that they take this information, whether it's crisis intervention, it's community partnerships, it's all those things. We get that overall goal completed, and then we give it to the school team and to the family so we can truly have that united front. As you'll see here on the next 2 slides, I'm not going to review these. These are just for the board. This is a very high level of kind of the call types of what we're seeing this semester, and then the next slide is the call disposition of how they ended. These are for this school year only, but if the board has questions about that, we can get to that at a different point. It is at a high level because we have to be very mindful of the material and information that is in there. If the board wants more information on this, you can request it through executive session. All right, next slide. All right, we'll talk about this. So one of the things I want to talk about is our threat screener. So the threat screener is based off of the 11 essential questions as identified by the Secret Service. That's what we use. Those are the questions that they've identified to help us predict an act of violence. We have probably about 400 of these a year. Now, that's a big number. The good news is that only, I think this year we're at 29 full team threat assessments. So you can see that's why it's a screen versus a full team threat assessment. So what we do is in that threat screener, you can see the team that's part of that. There is this a threat or is this a undesirable behavior from a student that's part of a different piece of that student's story, right? So a lot of the times on a threat screener, if it's not a full team threat assessment, then my team's job is to then defer to this team to my right to get the appropriate supports and interventions in place for that student. It is not disciplinary. It is just a purposeful conversation where the people identified have a different conversation of, do we need a bigger conversation outside of this where there's potentially acts of violence that could occur? If it does move forward, it is a full team threat assessment. There are times that this is part of potentially a reentry due to criminal charges. We don't do criminal charges based off of like marijuana or vapes. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about student was found in possession of a weapon, student had caused serious bodily injury and other things of that nature. We cannot complete this until our law enforcement partners say that it's not part of an active criminal investigation. So there is a board policy that does happen at times with this group that identifies if it's statutorily a crime of violence, and that student is immediately placed into TOL for the duration of the court proceedings. Once those court proceedings are concluded, we get the information from the courts, we get the police reports, and then we review that and complete the threat assessment to see whether the student can safety plan and return to school, or if we need to look at an alternative placement. A majority of my entire process ends in a safety plan, which is, as you can see, a partnership. Partnership with parents, students, and the school. It's connection of resources for student support. It's looking at the educational environment and the supports. It's really almost like this wraparound network that we bring into this student. Now, at times there are restrictions where a student needs to be searched prior to them coming onto school grounds, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it's all done. The restriction piece is really about 10%, and it's about 90% of support. If a student does violate this over a period of time, then it can result in suspension or alternative placement. We review these plans. What's important here also too is student, to advocate for that student if they're doing what we're asking them to do and they're making the steps to move forward. My team, we have a specific person that is assigned to this work. They review the plan every 6 to 8 weeks. If the student is doing well, depending on the nature, we can either back restrictions off, keep the supports in place, or we'll move on completely from the plan. There's a lot of different steps. So we don't just put a plan in place and walk away. We just continue to review those things. So those are the high level of the work that I do to support all of us and the students at our district.
So you've heard basically all the way from Sarah and Theo talking about what we do to prime our instructional environments for success, tier 1 practices, things that we train our teachers and principals in, all the way to scenarios where we have progressively, more severe behavior or situations where it's involving safety. So what questions do you have for us?
And just to add in, so we also have guests here from our principals in the building. They can help us with the questions.
Wonderful.
So if you want to introduce yourself, principals.
Danielle Fady, iFrames.
Sean Collins, head of schools for local high school. Go Public.
And Carrie and first principal at Jessica. Junior. Okay, questions start with me this time. And what I'm reflecting back on is a week ago when we had our board meeting, and there were lots of statements that were brought forward. And my question is, why aren't people readily following or accessing some of these things? Would that help alleviate the frustration, or is it just they're saturated? It's this point of year. And so there's just, there was a lot that came at us last week. And I understand that it's hard. It felt like they felt we weren't doing anything about anything. And we have a lot of pieces in place, ready to support. But why aren't they accessing it?
Yes.
It's a big question. I'll move on, but I just think about that.
Can I? And I know we have some principals here. We are hearing clearly from our teachers, our staff, that there are some serious behavioral concerns, really from early childhood through 12th grade. And legitimately, we're seeing it, absolutely. And I think what we heard from, at least the petition and the staff is that it needs to be really a joint effort, right? So it's an effort of teachers and staff with administration, with parents and community and board all really working together. There are systems in place. You've heard clearly, there's a lot that we're doing. And if it was easy, we would have solved it, right? The student behavior is very complex. It's highly variable. It's unpredictable. As Jennifer shared with us, we're seeing things we've never seen before, which just create additional complexities. But I'd love to just maybe bring some voice from the schools, because that's where our kids are. And if you each, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you can each maybe give a high level, just your thinking around that and what you're personally seeing and what your staff are seeing. We'll start with whomever.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Can you have them come closer, because I can't hear them at all where they are?
Yep. Do you want to just bring yourself and maybe bring a chair and your smile? That'd be great. So you can
This really was perfect timing after last Wednesday, so that's why.
So yeah, whoever, if you just introduce yourself again and just go one at a time, whoever would like to go first, that'd be great.
Well, you go.
Let me go?
Yeah.
Sean Collins, head of schools for Loveland High School. So a couple things. I just want to say that I'm new to Loveland High School. So I also have a perspective where I come from another district. And so I can just tell you from my personal experience coming from one district to Thompson, is the one thing that I really absolutely love and cherish is that the response by all the people that are up here and the immediacy in which you can get anybody on a phone and have somebody down into your building to help you problem solve whatever that issue might be, no matter what it might be. And so you don't always get that in other districts. You don't always get that at other places. And so I do want to say thank you very much to all of us that help to work, because it is a tireless profession that we have. Every student has a story that we may not know all the answers to, and so having all of these people at my phone, literally I can call it any time and have them respond and help support me through this. I will tell you that while we talk a lot about things like post-COVID and the impacts that has, and we're still, I think, as a nation, still trying to figure and wrap our heads around that. I see the vast majority of our students here for the right reasons. I see the vast majority of our students who walk my halls are excited about the opportunities that we offer them and what lies ahead. There are groups of students who need additional supports that we're here to provide. But I know with this, we're having this conversation, but I don't want us to forget about those students as well and all the great things that they are doing for us. My team meets every single week as an administrative team. We also, in that meeting, every single day, we go through our discipline process. We talk about specific students, we talk about procedures, we talk about trends, we use our systems that we have, such as EduClimber, for instance, to go through those things and kind of look at what the kind of trends that we see and how we can help support our students and our staff. We bring in our dean, we bring in our SROs, but we're all a team, and so we approach it from that standpoint. So we are working hard to help support every kid, because I want to see every one of my students, every single one of my Red Bulls graduate. So that's where I'm at.
I'm done. Let's go in.
Come down to me.
Yeah, and I echo Sean's statements about all of the members up here. They've been super accessible and supportive, and I do have to say, I love that if you give people a process and a protocol, they have comfort in that. And being in Thompson now 9 years, I've seen great improvements in establishing and communicating processes and protocols. So that's fantastic. And I agree, same thing, that, let's give kudos to the 98% of the kids that are doing it right. They come to school, they're working hard. And the ones that are struggling,
a lot of times they don't know how to behave and act, or they haven't learned those things. And that's what we're there for. We always talk about, we're there to teach instruction, but also teach behavior, because we, and as well as kids, we move throughout different audiences throughout the day, communities, and the way you act in one realm is very different in the other realm, and school is a very different realm. And then you have the effects of COVID, and we are still seeing that, and I think we'll still see that for the foreseeable future, even with our littles. I know in our primary classes, we're seeing some interesting behavior with kindergartners, and you're thinking, well, kindergartners were how old when COVID was occurring? But we have to remember, they were isolated in a home with just the people that were their family. And so there's a lot of behaviors they haven't learned, a lot of behaviors maybe they witnessed, all very influential, impactful. And just like Sean, our team, we have multiple teams. Our counselors and dean, we meet once a month. I meet with my admin team once a week. Our middle school team, we meet every 6 weeks, and we go through rosters, and we're looking at academics, attendance, and behavior, and trying to do cross-reference, because we know those are the areas that if we have red flags, what can we do? And we do this with our elementary as well through our PLCs. We're talking about what are the things that we're noticing, what's in place, and let's do a cycle of intervention. And is that working? If not, let's go to another level. And we've accessed the support of Dr. Guthels and definitely Joe Johnsky's team as well. So, I think we've got a lot of great things in place. It takes time. And I think it also is a culture of the school. I know I can only speak for High Plains, but I hammer relationships. We have the same slide deck, the same few slides in every slide deck when we meet in late starts. And one of the key ones is it shows a child, blank, and then a heart and a brain. And we show that every time we meet, because I drive it home. We are working with kids on both of those pieces, the whole child. And learning will come when you build relationships. And that takes a long time. And with kids that are really struggling or coming in with trauma, you got to put a lot more effort into it. And our staff are doing the great work and the heavy work of that. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so I can see, I didn't watch the board meeting. I didn't see that, but I can understand those frustrations. But I think it's just a whole level of things. Start with your culture, the importance of relationships, and then educating your families, your staff about here are the processes and protocols, here are the layers of support, and you just have to keep saying it.
So,
Great job, Danielle. No, absolutely. I echo what both of you have said. Some other things that I can think of. So this morning, if you were at the breakfast, Truscott Elementary School was in that first cohort of Kaiser Permanente grant recipients. So we have been a part of the Kaiser grant for 9 years. And it shows. We did trauma work before we really needed to do the trauma work that we did pre-COVID. And we came back actually in pretty decent shape because of the relationships and years of training. But that takes time. And not all of our colleagues had that same opportunity and benefit of years of great in-depth training. So that is taking some time. Systems and structures, being a part of implementation teams. We did PBIS, even though that's been something that's been strong at Truscott. But for the last 2 years, really just worked on our first tier 1, how are we engaging students? So we have staff at every door serving breakfast to kids. We did do slow starts so that we can build relationships during breakfast. My teachers give up their time in the morning to be able to build relationships with kids at a slow pace as they come in. We do an all-school assembly every Monday morning, focused on our entire school community working together to do the best together. That's for teachers, that's for staff, students, parents join us. So we're doing all-school teaching around our expectations of students, but also our expectations of ourselves. And we're using Character Strong, which is a curriculum that we're piloting at Truscott that's been phenomenal. That's used during
Monday morning assemblies, but also announcements. My teachers are teaching that in English and in Spanish, which is phenomenal for us. We look at data as well. My teachers set goals around student behavior, and so we're talking about students and PLCs every week to ensure that we're meeting their needs. We have a mental health team meeting every week as well to really try to figure that, how do we support? And if it's not working, we want to intervene immediately. What do we do next, right away? Culture with staff, that's important as well. We're asking them to work with our, students to the very best of their ability. So what do you do to build culture within your community of teachers so that they know they have support and they can rely on people to step up when it's hard? I spend a lot of time in kindergarten, I'll be real honest, because that's where the greatest need is. And if I'm not willing to step in and do the work, how can I ask my teachers to step in and do the work? So it's just alongside and really a team effort to make a difference for kids.
Thank you to all of you. Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Yes. We're gonna just think, but we might have more questions. Don, to you, do you have a question for him?
Listen to my name. Yeah. Well, also just thoughts, right? I mean, we tripped into my world, and I'm not here tonight because I'm at a suicide prevention convention, for conference for 2 days, right? And I just want to point out a couple of things that I think are really important to anchor us in this work, which is that nationwide, our suicide rate has increased 35% over the last few years. And that the only county in the United States that we are aware of that has had a decrease is Larimer County. We've consistently decreased, and we are now at 16.6% reduction in suicide rates. And we've done that year over year since 2018 steadily. And the people in this room and everybody else who's worried about this are part of that in a very, very big way. So yes, absolutely, there's a lot going on, but I want to anchor us in the most important part of where this is coming from. And that's both me being a pain in the ass about this stuff as well as me being a champion for this stuff. And so I just want to point out, yay for everything we've done. We're doing the real hard work, and I'm so excited to just hear all the examples that have been shared of that, because it's not for the faint of heart. I am not surprised that people are exhausted, because on top of it, we're real humans who are exhausted, right? Adults and kids everywhere are struggling with this. We are not unique in that. We are someone, we are a place that said we were going to take this on and we're going to do better. And we are doing better in a way that is saving lives. And so I want people to feel fulfilled at work, and I want kids to learn. And I think that those are worthy of our time, right? That's what we're here for. But we've also said that we're going to do that in a way that's really well done and with integrity, and we're going to do it with fidelity and rigor and a bunch of things that we didn't talk about a few years ago. And so I just want to point that out, because we're still seeing that as the biggest struggle with our law enforcement, right? The second we brought that on, we continue to see that increase. That's the bottom line, and that's sort of one example of where kids are struggling, and we can just put our finger on it. So it's not as if we've reined that in. We are still seeing that at the very worst, scariest level that we can imagine, our kids are struggling a lot. And so, this is all really nuanced. I know we brought up restorative. I just want to throw it out there that to do restorative practices takes time. It takes building community and capacity and ability. It takes professional development. It takes people feeling comfortable and vulnerable and safe. And I know that none of those things we can say are happening every day, every place, all the time, right? So we need more humans to do that. We need more time. I wouldn't be surprised if part of why people feel itchy about a lot of this is because we don't have as many resources as we need to do that as well as we need to, because it's a lot. I mean, we just don't. And yet we're still trying to do it to the best of our ability with what we have, right? We're trying to infuse that. So my mind went to, you know, what investments can we make in the adults, right? What are the supports, the practices, the resources, the professional development? I did hear some things that concerned me in every possible direction last week. There were things I loved and things I hated about the language that was used still. And I'm concerned about that we just don't even have a foundation, let alone capacity, to do better than this. We're doing something impossible with what we have, frankly. I still see inequity in all the data that we look at. And, you know, that matters to me, that I'm seeing inequity in every place that we look in our system. And I've honed in on many places. There's a lot that was in this deck that we talked about over the years because I was concerned about how it's showing up in different places. And I'm still seeing that on fire, right? I mean, and so I'm glad, Mark, that you mentioned that about, like, if it was easy, we'd be doing it. I appreciate that there was a call out for the hard work that everybody has done and the efforts that have been done. I'm actually really glad to hear all the things we're doing, right? Because that's the foundation. And it's amazing that we've done all that. And also clear, you know, there's still a need that is above what we're already doing. And so all of those things being true, I'm glad that we're having this conversation right now. Mostly I'm just putting these things out there to, like, add some more context to some of the things I think we should be thinking about and how we do this.
Okay, Don, I'm going to go ahead and let the others share questions, unless you have a specific question you want to ask now. Okay, thank you very much. Stu,
All
you have a
right.
question?
Yeah, actually, I have several, but they are going to be quick answer questions on your part. Let me begin by asking Jennifer and your team, have you seen the statements that the board received at the last meeting provided by TEA? There's a section of statements from elementary teachers and from secondary teachers. And would it be useful for you to see what they had to say?
Yeah, no, I have not seen them. I heard them. I did listen into the session, and
We actually have written copies, so if it's something that you would be interested in, I guess that's something you could talk with Dr. Schaefer about.
Thank you.
About getting. I was blown away by the breadth of the responsive processes. I had no idea that there were so many processes in place. What I wondered, now I'm going to get into the questions quickly, is there a continuum of these processes? They were divided into categories in the slides, but is there a hierarchical, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, or is everything just kind of left open to, well, whatever occurs to you at the moment?
If it's okay with the group, I'll take that question. So I referred to that discipline matrix. So part of what's in there is recommendations on the level of responses, right? So the level of consequence or disciplinary response for individual unique behaviors. So that can help our principals know what you were saying of where do you start, when do you jump to this? That's one tool. As far as the specific ones on the slide, denial of admission is as a student is enrolling. So that's when that happens. And then the other two are really, has to be if the behavior has met a certain criteria as defined in state statute. So students clearly misbehave and can be disruptive, but not all of it meets the criteria. So if it meets that criteria, then we can have the conversation about moving forward with those processes. And we didn't create the criteria. You know, we're working within state statute and board policy on those.
All right. So at the point that there's a serious disruption, something dangerous that happens, etc., let's say it happens in a classroom, the staff member, the first part of the process is a staff member goes to a building administrator,
can let our principals answer that.
Yeah, so, well,
But
so we've implemented, so there's a lot of layers here. You start with tier one, where it's I can only speak for High Plains. Every room has a refocused protocol and refocused area. And what that is when you have minor behavior, it could be calling out, not attending to the tasks, needing several redirects. The teacher goes into their refocused protocol and will direct the student to go to the cozy corner, here are some things, activities they can do, and then they'll check back in with them. They might do that a couple of times. If the behavior escalates, that goes to a different level. All of our teachers have radios. We have a 3-level radio system. So we know that level 1 is, hey, whenever you get there, I just need a student to get a break. And that means if we get that level 1, that means that they've done their refocus protocol. We know they've done their part to try and de-escalate behavior. We're not talking about throwing desks. Level 2 radio calls are, we need somebody in 5 minutes. I have gone through my protocols, but this student really needs an extra hand. Level 3 is all hands on deck, and that is a child that has escalated to a point that is disruptive to the entire class. And in those scenarios, we also have a protocol where the class can be evacuated. If the student is not willing to come out, and we have a certain process we follow for directly, we set timers, we have very defined, concise language. And if the child doesn't come out, we evacuate the students in that class. So it kind of is a whole bunch of levels of what to do at that time.
Understanding and appreciating the fact that teachers do a lot of diffusing of emotion. My question was really geared toward something serious happening in the class, something dangerous, for example. The staff member is directed, or staff members are directed to go to building administrators then, or to contact building administrators.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah, there's a referral process through Fayette campus that they would complete.
Okay.
Yep.
Jennifer, I guess the next question is for you. Administrators, all of our administrators in the district, principals, assistant principals, deans, etc., are trained in the continuum, in the different steps. Everybody has had the training.
Yes.
So that they know what to do when whatever explosion it is occurs.
That's correct. And we've started in the last couple of years with realizing that the training for our brand new administrators or folks coming from a different district would need in that area is different than our principals who've been here for a while. So we do both onboarding training in that regard and refresher training. And then, of course, when school law changes, we would do additional training.
All right. Then I have two other quick questions, completely different kinds of questions. You probably would expect that I was going to have a couple of questions related to Berthoud, and these are questions related to Berthoud. When I saw slides 12 and 13, the call type and the call disposition, Joe, are these TSD? Is this TSD data, not just City of Loveland?
Yes, that's all of Thompson schools.
Okay, good. And remind me of the co-responder availability in the Berthoud schools.
I'll let these two speak to that.
Yeah, so we recently just added a second team. So Loveland Police has an officer. We just hired another clinician. We trained him, Michelle and I, and the team together trained him for about 3 months in classroom setting and then out in the field, observing them to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. And then one thing that Joe has done is made sure that the Loveland team can respond to any of the schools that I can respond to. So if I'm tied up at Loveland High working a crisis with the student and the other co-responder team, the Loveland officer and the Summit Sun clinician, get a call like Berthoud, for instance, or Johnstown, or Urban Fort Collins, they can respond just like I can to any of those schools. So we have agreements in place to make sure that we have that consistent coverage and equality between all of the schools.
That's the answer I hoped I would get. Thank you, Bart, for letting me ask questions.
Nancy?
This, to me, the behavior issue, it's very complex and complicated, and so I don't know that we have enough time to go into all of the
We don't right now, but yeah.
issues.
Yeah, as you said.
But my concern is, as I have brought this up numerous times for probably over a year. As I listened to this first part, and actually most of the presentation, I'm not certain if I was a teacher who had signed that petition, I would feel like I was being heard. I don't think that I would feel I was being heard at all. And so I also know that the co-responder edition is a great edition, but I also know that there used to be reports on the SRO data, the other type of data, and we're only getting this small co-responder piece of data now. And I think we miss a lot of information that would help us all see and understand and appreciate that what the teachers, which over 500 signed, were motivated to sign so because these other numbers are larger than any of us know, because they're not presented and they're not talked about. And I do think, as much as we want to talk and help them with counseling and all this other stuff, there is something to be said for consequences. And I don't mean like, punitive, but there's got to be something different that's done, because what they have said last week and what I have heard directly from parents, teachers, students, and we have also heard from students in different environments, this isn't about the student's story that's doing the behavior. It's also the stories for the students that are experiencing it, and those teachers who are experiencing it, and the trauma it's across the board for everyone. And I appreciate that everyone here does this work, but I still believe that we are not looking at this deep enough or in a way, or building the partnerships community-wide that we need to really address this issue, because students are afraid to go to the bathroom. That's not okay. And so as much as I appreciate all this, I just think we're missing a lot of the story by not having more of the discipline data so that we can really understand what's really going on in the classroom that these teachers are dealing with every day. And so I don't really have a question, but that's all I have to say.
All right, Alexandra.
I have a couple of questions. One related to the co-responders, when you were talking about people with the safety plans and stuff like that, are they part of that, or do they know that? Because I imagine with the follow-ups that, many of their calls are follow-ups, I would suspect that they're involved with a lot of these students. So I'm curious what their knowledge is.
So absolutely, I'll let them speak to some of their work on that. It depends on the situation. I may not involve them for a student who is on a safety plan for being, caught with a vape pen twice. If a student was returning from hospitalization, things like that. If there was, the school team had reached out for maybe an assist to connect them to an outside community resource, we may have the co-responders on that. But it's not all of them, but it is specific to that work. Did you two want to add anything to it?
Yeah, so it's weird coming into the school setting because we safety plan calls the vast majority of the time. And then we work really closely with Joe's team when there is a safety plan. So don't want to double do something. One is be consistent. And I think that's the case with school admin. We try to work so that there's no conflicting information given to any student or family in those circumstances. I think that now with more capacity, with having a second team, the hope is to be able to be more involved, to be able to provide more preventative interventions as well. But I would say the vast majority of the time, the relationships that we've built in school allow admin, counselors, school teachers, and staff to come up to us and say, hey, so-and-so's on a safety plan, and I'm kind of concerned. What can we do? And that's where some of the case consults and care coordination numbers come back.
One of my favorite things about this unit and kind of how we designed it and built it is if a school principal needs them, they just call dispatch or they fill out a referral form and they have direct access. They don't have to go through me to get to them.
Okay, I have two more questions. One is about sort of maybe for you, Jennifer, I'm not sure about, maybe, I don't know, maybe for anybody, about like, I mean, you sort of alluded to it, the difference in like ages of the kids, right? Like, while we don't want to expel anybody, it's very different to expel a 16-year-old versus a 5-year-old. So like how, I mean, again, this is a huge question, but like sort of briefly, how is that determination made? Or like, I imagine there are much stricter criteria for expelling younger kids than for older ones.
Yeah,
And as far as like the denial of admission criteria.
Yeah, I can take part of that, at least, which is that it's actually in board policy and state statute that there's different requirements for students grade 2 and under versus 3 and up for all school removals, so suspensions as well as expulsions. And then, of course, I mean, anyone who's been around kids would know that there's a difference between a 5-year-old engaging in a behavior versus a 15-year-old, in part because, of course, we understand that they're still learning at a different, like they're at a different point in their learning progress, right? 5 versus 15. However, what I want to add to that is I think it was Danielle that mentioned it, that that's one of the long ongoing impacts of COVID, is that things that you know, those of us who have been doing this for a while would be like, 15-year-olds should know this. We are finding that many of them don't. And so that can be very difficult, you know, and you think about the years you spend learning to be a great teacher. And part of what you're learning is to be a great teacher to, you know, the age of kids that you work with. And now all over the last few years, they're not the same age in a sense, like developmentally, they're different. So I do think, well, of course we factor in developmental readiness when we're looking at discipline, not just because of state statute and board policy. How we did that is having to shift because of those impacts. So that would be my answer to that question. I could see if anyone wants to go deeper.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, absolutely, COVID has had an impact. Our second graders last year, so our current third graders, like we were watching, they didn't know how to interact with each other because they were 6 feet apart in kindergarten. When you teach how to get along and social skills and all of those pieces. So we actually split our second grade cohort of kids into 5 different groups and did like really intensive, hi, my name is, how do you respond to someone and get to know each other in a way and resolve conflict in a safe way rather than in the ways that we were seeing. So we're doing a little bit of that again with our kindergartners this year. And we're just seeing that every year there's just that little bit of additional need. But in our primary grades, you really have to look at it differently. And that's why we do a lot of early intervention, I think, as well. We're trying to meet those needs now, and my third graders are doing amazing now, in part to that splitting kids up and really thinking outside the box, which I think we're having to do a lot more of to try to meet the needs of where kids are at.
Shopping. And then my last question is for you, Mr. Collins. That a lot of culture has to do with what we call ourselves and each other. And I noticed you call yourself head of schools instead of principal. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, so Loveland is a IB school, and so in IB schools we're referred to as head of schools since we're the actual head of the school.
Okay.
So yeah, just as the name implies.
Thank you.
Yep.
Amy.
I just wanted to say, thank you all for being here and for the work that you do. It's pretty impressive. Me being in Thompson, I see that, but I think, Sean, your point of, having an outsider perspective, and I know down at CASB, talking about our co-responder team and just the robustness of that and the layers of support that we're offering our families and our students, teachers. So there are systems in place. I guess I'll just ask sort of a quick question because of time. And I don't quite know how to ask this, but would you say that it's sort of all behavior, or are there, are there a small number causing large problems? Or I don't know if you can answer that. But is it sort of behavior all over the place? Like, huge groups, or is it a few students that cause large or have large trauma and need support? And I don't know.
I can start. So I have the opportunity to be in each of our elementary schools on a fairly regular basis. So in some of the buildings, I'm there weekly, and other buildings, I'm there every other week. And I appreciate that question, because what we're seeing is we do see some pockets of big behaviors.
Yeah.
What we're not seeing is all big behaviors. We are seeing, I think someone said that 98% of our students are excited to be at school. Some of our kids might need some extra support with the social skill piece, like what like Karen was talking about, but for the most part, our kids are happy at school. They are learning, they are working with their peers, and they're engaging in school well. We have seen, as Dr. Schaefer mentioned, some interesting behaviors that we haven't encountered before. And so sometimes that gets a lot of attention, and it makes it seem like we have this issue that has permeated every classroom in every school. And I don't see that when I'm walking through our schools.
And so from the secondary, I would echo pretty much what I heard Sarah say. Like when you walk through our classrooms, you see students engaged, you see them having a relationship with teachers. And when I typically get called into a situation, it's for about, like when Danielle said 98% of the kids do what they need to do to be successful around the school. It's probably that 2% of kiddos that probably elevate their behavior to a way that ends up in our intensive discipline meeting that we have once a week, to where we end up trying to strategize pretty much around the same kids and the same issues and needs. And so I truly see that the majority of our kids do what we ask them to do. They try to enjoy school, have fun, develop that sense of belonging within the culture of schools. But that is that 2% of student that are acting out for a variety of different reasons that we try to problem solve in our weeks.
Rose, questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the 2%, and some of those 2% are big behaviors, using your language. What are we doing after we round processes and stabilize the student in the situation? But the kids that have been evacuated from the classroom, the teacher who's just been through this, traumatizing exchange and not being able to get control of that student. What's the aftermath? You want to sure the keys available both for students and kids. How do we address getting back to a good spot? Them feeling safe, because we're definitely hearing it from our teachers. They don't feel safe. If they don't feel safe, our students don't feel safe. So what's the flow chart or whatever it is that's in place? If I could just start with a short answer to that, and then of course our principals, I'm sure, have details that they can add. But really, what to me you're referring to is that restoration, right? That repair of the relationship. And while on one hand, we have many celebrations to share about the learning that has happened in our schools about how to do that better. It's interesting that you bring up that question, because as I've been listening to our whole exchange, I've been reminded of how that is actually on, kind of our list of things that we need to continue to get those tools into our classrooms and our schools, because we see some more successes in some places than others. And without doing that repair of that harm and that healing, what we know will happen is that the chances for the disruption to be big again, to use that term, are much higher. And that's true for any of us who've had a really negative interaction with another person. Unless that is healed in some way, we can be on edge, and that is not going to be helpful to any of the processes we just have talked through tonight. So on one hand, I would, we had another 3 hours. I'd share many celebrations about progress we've made in what you're talking about, but I actually would have that on my list of things that we can continue to get more tools
into our schools around. And I'm sure principals would have more to share.
We just did reentry training with my staff. So what do we do when a student's had a behavior and you're maybe not ready to talk to them? You know, we're asking kids to come back in a classroom and maybe teachers don't feel ready to repair that relationship yet. And so we gave different ideas around what that might look like, how much time you might need. We always have someone join that student back in the room. We never just take them back and leave them. There's always my counselor, my SEL specialist, myself, our instructional coach. Someone is going back in with that child and ensuring that everyone is in a good spot. And while that student is removed, someone is also checking on the classroom. That doesn't happen very often at Truscott, but when it does, we want to ensure that kids feel safe in school.
We have some layers where we might have to do with this. We do facilitated mediation between the students and the other students that may have had harm, and also the adults and the students. So we've had a lot of training and restorative practices, peacekeepers, and that's the majority of our staff. So we utilize those pieces.
Yeah. I absolutely do not want to minimize the feelings and how the teachers feel, because they're in the classroom every single day. And so there is a level that we need to make sure that we continually remember that they're the other side of that coin when it comes to that conflict that takes place. And so one of the practices, that we make sure that we try to address is doing that restorative piece with teachers and students, but making sure that we give time, I think, for that to take place, and to really kind of listen to what those issues and concerns are when it comes to teachers. Because, like I said before, it's, they have a really difficult job, and, they're dealing with 120 kids a day, and sometimes it can take just one to kind of throw your whole day off. So we need to be there for them. Absolutely, without a doubt. I agree. 100%.
If I can also extend a little bit on what Sean's saying and our principals as well. We've given like 2% of students, and I want to be careful to quantify it. I think we could safely say that the vast majority of students are, they show up and they, are well behaved. There's a lot of secondary trauma, I would say, as a result of a student misbehavior, or if there's vaping in the bathroom. You may have several students doing that, but that impacts hundreds of students if they're aware of it. Or when you have a student that is disruptive in a classroom and now you have to move 20 or 30 kids out, that has impact as well. So it's, there's various degrees as well, right? So there's a continuum of, kind of where behaviors are. So, we could bring every one of our principals in here, and I think they would say that, yep, the vast majority of our students, we have good days. And we have some students that don't have as good of days. But those students, we have to support those students. We also have to support the rest of the class and the rest of the school as well, because teachers observe and see. It may not be happening in their classroom, but it may be happening in the hallway. It may be happening next door. And so when we get the reports that I don't feel safe, or a lot of it may not be directly happening in my classroom on today, but I'm observing it. And so there is that impact as well. And I think that continues to make this a complex opportunity for us.
We did also I was just like, the timing of that is interesting, because we did just share in our newsletter a study learning from our restorative practices specialist on teaching kids how to give effective apologies, right? So it's as simple as the difference between, I've done some harm to you, and I say, I'm sorry, versus I'm sorry for whatever I did, versus I'm sorry for whatever I did. Can you give me a second chance?
Okay.
And by acknowledging the harm you've done and asking for that second chance, you make yourself vulnerable, but you also give the other person an opportunity to forgive you, and that is when that healing can happen. And if you think about the things that our kiddos missed out on when they were on their computers at home, that's one of the things they missed out on. And it was already hard to teach kids that before. So we just had that topic in our newsletter, and we will continue to attend to it.
Well, I thank all of you for taking a long time tonight. It was just perfect timing, considering
our last week's meeting and then knowing that we talked about disciplined student behavior. It was too big of an opportunity to pass up and just say thanks for sharing and walk away. I feel like we needed to hear a lot about what we needed. I'm sure it's not finished, but I just wanted to know that we appreciate you taking time and spending your evening with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where are we here? We're almost done.
You should stop it.
All right, two things, just future topics for school board meetings. And I'm going to adjourn us from this evening. So thank you all for hanging in there.